Good morning, good morning, good morning. Good morning. What a, I can't believe you guys are so wound up. I just pull in and there's all this noise coming in here and everybody's all welcome. And first off, and secondly, thank you for coming out in on this lovely day. I have a confession to make. So we'll start with that. First is, I had no idea that a Phoenix, Maryland existed. I told my buddy yesterday I was going to Phoenix, Maryland. He said, "What time's your flight?" So that tells you where we are with that. And thus the 3-hour drive this morning probably amounted for that. But I want to, again, thank you guys for all being here. There's so much that we're going to be covering today. And I want to share with you how grateful I am for you for this opportunity to hear and understand all the things that Maryland Realtors does for you. We always say in the background, but it's not in the background. It's just right. It's just, we always say that, but the truth is it's right in front of your eyes. But this is an opportunity for us to share with you all the goings on in and outs of Maryland Realtors. And for me, it's kind of a proud moment as your president, because you get to see and maybe find out something that you didn't know that's happening. And that's the first thing. We're going to have a great question and answer period at the end. You'll be able to ask all the questions, and I'm sure you're going to have some wonderful questions for us. I'm going to ask you, and I haven't even talked to Chuck, I just kind of flew in here, but I'm going to ask you guys to, we're going to have the conversation about NAR, and we're going to have the conversation about the lawsuit and the settlement. Let's try and keep that to a minimum, maybe till the end, if that's okay. I'm sure that's probably a smart idea. But I promise you, we will address it and we're going to talk about it. We have lots of conversations surrounding it. I feel like I've answered 4,000 questions the last week over this topic. And I'll leave you on that note with that we're upset too, but we're going to do what we need to do. And so that's what I'm going to leave you with, and you'll hear more about that as we go along. I'd like to thank our exec team. I think I see our former president, Yolanda Muckle, here today. Our president-elect, Cheryl Abrams Davis. And our CEO, Mr. Chuck Caskey. Did I miss anybody on the exec team, or is everybody, that's who's here? I know Chris
Chris can't make it, and Denise is on.
Got it. Just making sure I didn't miss anybody. And also, I'm also going to start by saying the amazing, incredible, phenomenal staff at Maryland Realtors is here today as well. You guys have, if you haven't gotten to know me, I'm off script quite a bit, but I'm going to share with you one last thing, and that is, I say that without holding any reserve, because these people are the heart of our association, and they just put a pause on everything over the last few weeks to do what's right for us. And for that, I'm truly thankful, because you guys are doing the right things for us. So thank you for all that you do right off the bat. So I think I'll cut it short. We should be on a good timeline. I'm sure we have a great day planned. And I think with that, I think Chuck is next. So here you go.
So let's talk about the NAR settlement. That's what happens when you don't check with me, Chris. Because this is our life now. We carry around the settlement agreement. We flag it, we highlight it, we go to the practice changes look, it opened right to the practice changes section, which, if you're interested, if you want to follow along on your copy, is page 27. I only made one. No, that's not true. I inadvertently made another one, but it's on my desk. And then, but we are, obviously. It's one of the reasons many of us are here. And are we streaming this or recording it? I forget. We're recording it for later on. So everything will be available to anyone who wants to see it, and it's another way, again, to reach our members. And we actually, it's the elephant in the room. So, of course, we want to talk about it. There have been a couple of important developments. The questions now are getting, I don't want to say repetitive exactly, but they're falling into pretty distinct categories, right? And so a lot of this has to do with what the future of the MLS looks like. And I have just communicated with Brian, and he and I are going to coordinate our responses and hopefully make several joint appearances over the next few months. And in starting with our podcast at the end of the month, that'll be dropped in May. And then I've invited him also, he and I need to talk about other opportunities to appear together, because we have questions about each other's businesses and practices, et cetera. So I really do think that Maryland Realtors and Bright MLS need to coordinate our responses and a lot of our communications. So our communications teams will be coordinating, and Brian and I will be talking, and the rest of our legal staff and Bright's lawyers, and so we need to have and speak with one voice. And so far we have. I haven't seen anything that gives me pause or anything that I would have hoped that was said differently. But we're linked. We're joined at the hip now, right? And so it is important for Maryland Realtors and Bright MLS to have to get all your questions and answer them in coordination. So I'm excited about that and those opportunities. I even suggested maybe something at the conference, maybe Brian and I, and that'll be after the effective date, if it holds, mid-July, of the practice changes. Now, that's subject to sliding, because the plaintiffs still haven't requested it. So, it's 120 days after that, is that, or 90, which I forget. 90 days after that, and so they haven't yet. So that mid-July practice change deadline might slip. We just don't know. So as Chris mentioned, there's a lot we don't know. So we have questions, you have questions. We are getting some clarity, though, as far as where they might be going, where the parties might be going. We think, obviously, we've heard a lot about seller concessions now, right? And so if it's off MLS, the offer of cooperative compensation, at least, is off MLS, but it could still be a seller concession. That seems to be this emerging consensus, and then how that's communicated, whether that can be in the MLS, which it doesn't say compensation, so it might be a loophole that they might want to close at some point if we talk about seller concessions. But then you have to ask yourself, how many sellers are going to be willing to make those concessions? You really have to ask and answer those questions. And then obviously the conversations that we're going to have with buyers about compensation is going to get complicated. There's just no way around it. And so we're developing our new forms. Kathleen's going to talk about those, I'm sure. I'm sure you're going to have a lot of questions about those. Just know that these are all proposed. The Forms Committee hasn't even met yet. So we can only talk so much about the directions that we think this might be going, but we are thinking about it. That's the most important thing. We do know that the VA is going to continue to be a problem. The good news on that front, well, I wouldn't say good news. The news on that front, at least, is that NAR is actively engaged with the VA. We've seen the letters that they've sent. We've talked to the advocacy folks at NAR. As you can imagine, the VA is a big, big department, and it's bureaucratic. It's steeped in its own history. I can tell you from NAR's perspective, the initial reactions from NAR have not been all that giving us all that a great confidence that they're going to be willing to do anything. And even if they were, they cannot move fast. This is a gigantic organization. Anything that happens as far as VAs allowing buyers to compensate their brokers is years away, not months, right? I mean, think about changing federal regulation. It takes months and months and months and can easily slip into years. So there's not going to be a resolution of VA buyers compensating their brokers anytime soon. There's just not. And I think we have to talk about that, and we have to speak in it, and because I know straight answers are sometimes hard to come by. And when we deal with NAR especially, I'm not going to throw NAR under the bus. I'll leave that for Chris. But it's hard sometimes to get a straight answer from NAR. If you've had to deal with them on a higher level and you ask a straight answer and you get a answer, you ask a straight question and you get an answer that's all kind of categorical, right? So when you ask them about VA, well, yeah, we've engaged VA, but it's going to be a long time. And now that, to their credit, they have been clear about that, right? FHA, we have better news that seller concessions are not an interested party contribution subject to the caps, at least in the FHA world, right? So that seller concessions operate outside of those limits, the 369, whatever they are. And so the good news is there is an opportunity there to have the conversation with sellers about concessions toward closing costs the buyer can choose to use to pay the broker's commissions as a seller concession. That seems to be, now don't quote me on this, what are the odds, right? Chuck says, right? But that seems to be emerging as a potential avenue to address this. But the bigger conversations are around what is it in the best interest of sellers to do that and how we have those conversations with sellers. And then we have the turn to the conversation with buyers about compensation. And when you see the new buyer brokerage agreements, we're not showing those today. They're still in Taylor and Kathleen and I met for over an hour yesterday, and we still have questions. But the Forms Committee is going to take a look at those. I think they're in good shape draft-wise. There's going to be some bold recommendations in there about how to address these concerns. And then we're going to have a substantial amount of education about how to have those conversations with buyers, right? Because how do you explain to buyers how I get paid? And you guys know this, right? You go to the buyer agency agreement, even as it exists today, and you get to the compensation field, and you put in an amount of compensation, and buyers freak out. Wait, I thought you were free. I didn't think I didn't have to pay you. Well, now you might. And so the conversation got more complicated now, because we have buyer compensation, maybe, seller compensation, maybe, listing broker compensation, maybe. So you have three potential sources of compensation for the buyer's broker. How do you have that conversation with a typical buyer? Good luck, right? No, we're not leaving you out there on your own, I promise. We will help, but this is going to be, I can tell you where we're going. Oh, wait. Before I make a prediction, I want to be very careful to tell you, don't listen to anybody who's making predictions. Because there's a lot of people out there who claim to know what this business is going to look like in 6, 9, 12, 18, 24, 36 months. And they're going to be wrong, right? They don't know. And it's not stopping them, right, from making these predictions about, oh, this is how it's going to be. This is what it's going to look like. We don't know. Having said that, I predict, no, I'm kidding. We will have to deal with this, and brokers and managers are going to have to take the lead on this, because we're constrained in terms of the amount of direction that we can give you, because we're all now worried about antitrust, right? And so how much can the state association, how much can NAR, how much can even the local boards provide you without violating these antitrust laws. So we're going to have to tread very lightly. We're going to provide as much material as we can and collateral, a ton of it, I promise. But at the end of the day, the brokers and managers are going to have to be the ones to sit their agents down and say, here's the conversation you need to have with sellers. Here are the conversations you need to have with buyers. And role play. If it were me, I'd get two of my trusted agents and I'd prepare some scripts, or I'd say, look, use your experience to tell people, and what are the questions buyers have? What are the questions sellers have? Real people that you have dealt with, and here's how we think you might answer those questions. And here's how you might explain it. But we can't do that. Brokers and managers are going to have to do that. Okay? And we'll provide any support that we can, I promise. Did you see the headline today? Yet another lawsuit in New York. Did you see that? Now, this one is just one person. Apparently, he's like an investor. He's bought and sold several properties, I think. Huh?
In several states.
In several states, not Maryland. But apparently, he has bought and sold several properties, and he's suing. It's not a class action suit. It's suing individually. This is not price fixing case. This is tying. Now, tying is another element of antitrust law under which a company, and this has happened, Microsoft was accused of this years ago, of saying in order to get one product or service over here, you have to buy another one over here. And they're tied together and you can't buy them separately. And so that's a separate area of antitrust law apart from price fixing, which is the existing cases are mostly price fixing cases. This is a tying case. And now that implicates, not just antitrust, nor not just the DOJ, but the Federal Trade Commission also has a hand in enforcing antitrust law, especially as it relates to these tying arrangements. So it's a whole completely different avenue. And we, again, just filed now. Years for these to resolve. Remember, the Sitzer-Burnett case was filed in 2019 and just settled now. So again, and these are years and years before they get to resolution. So we have issues about unrepresented buyers. Okay, here's my prediction that I do. So don't listen to Chuck, because I just warned you not to. But we're gonna see more unrepresented buyers in the market. It's really just, I think, unfortunate, but I think that it's almost an inevitability. And I'm seeing nods. Thank you, Anita. I'm seeing some heads nod. And how we deal with those, and how commissions are going to be structured in a situation with unrepresented buyers. And so we're having a lot of back and forth with NAR about that whole written agreement part. I know you know about the settlement, and yet you have to have a written agreement with buyers. In Maryland, we have a written agreement with a buyer who we are representing, right? That's different. The settlement just says before you may show them a home. That's not the law of Maryland. You can still show a home to an unrepresented buyer in Maryland without a written agreement as long as you are either a listing agent or a sub-agent and you give them the disclosure form, right? So the first phrase of that paragraph or sub-paragraph says, unless contrary to state law, which this would be, right? Unless inconsistent with state law. See, Kathleen's is even more dog-eared than mine. And so we do have avenues. We have conversations with NAR. We think we're good. Again, as long as we're using the state disclosure form when we're in front of unrepresented buyers. And I think that's the other avenue, not only the conversations with buyers and sellers, but also how to deal with unrepresented buyers, because I think it's almost inevitable that there will be more of them, okay? Who believes that prices are going to come down because of this settlement? Anybody? Anybody think housing prices are coming down because sellers aren't going to compensate the buyer's broker, so they're going to reduce the prices as opposed to take the money. So what's the incentive for them to offer these concessions that they don't have to provide, right? So there's this avenue, but there's a real question about how many of these sellers are going to actually offer those concessions. And a part of that is, again, our conversation with sellers about the pros and cons of offering those concessions or not, right? That's what it's going to come down to. So let's be real clear about this. And we can simplify. These are very complicated issues, but guess what? We can distill these down to their essence and come up with very clear answers. Now, in practice, of course, it's going to be more complicated, but that's up to you. But we're going to work really, really hard at taking these very complicated things, distilling them down again, making them as simple as we can so that most of our members will be able to work with what we provide, and then again, brokers and managers can, I wrote 120 days after preliminary approval. I wrote that down. Anyway, but they haven't filed yet. Okay. I have another prediction. As it relates to compensation, talk to your commercial practitioners. They've been doing this forever. Forever. In the commercial information exchanges, there's no offers of compensation. That's done broker to broker once there's a letter of intent and once there's conversation about, and this buyer is actually interested in this commercial property, then the brokers talk about compensation. And they enter into a separate compensation agreement between the brokers. I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing, right? So again, we got all these avenues to explore, and I think that might be one kind of crack in a little opening for us to explore other options as far as having that conversation about compensation. Let's just Chuck talking. You know, we'll see what happens. Okay, that's all I have to start us off, and I hate to leave on that note. I like to leave them laughing, but I don't think I got that in me right now. What's next? Who's next? Do we have the agenda? I'm supposed to know this. Oh, Chuck. I can control that. Oh, that's me.
You got your laugh.
Wait, yeah, there you go. Okay, we did that. We did that. Oh, we did that. Did we do that? Yes, we did. You didn't tell me about this? Oh, I made that. Yeah, of course we did. This was supposed to be up the whole time. You want to snap a picture of that, or no, we're going to say it later? Okay, so there you go. You're welcome.
I just want to say I was on the agenda.
You were. Do I talk about this too? Am I taking a lot of time? I feel like I'm taking a lot of time. Is this timed? The agenda timed?
All the time you want.
Take it. We have a new strategic plan, everybody. Woohoo!
We're way early.
This was a great, we got plenty of time. This was a great experience, and you know, we do strategic planning, and you guys know, we've all been, most of us, and I think probably I look around this room, I think the majority of people in this room have worked on strategic plans over time, and so we all know that it probably rates just below employee evaluations for things to avoid, right? I mean, I don't want to do employee evaluations, nobody does. And who wants to sit through strategic planning and you know, 2 days sometimes? I remember one time I sat through a strategic planning session that was 2 days, and I thought, and it was off-site, and I couldn't even get home. So it was like, just shoot me, you know, just don't, just really, it could be such a painful experience. So, but we have this great formula. We do it in a day. We're in and out, and, you know, we come up with a plan, and the members are engaged, and especially when they can focus, and you want to make sure that they get home in time. And it was a great experience. And we added a lot of new things because, there are some things in strategic plans that are evergreen and, advocacy, does that really change over, after 2 or 3 years or whatever? Some, but it's a pretty consistent aspect of the plan. The acronym is CARE, Connections, Advocacy, Resources, and Expertise. We talked about connections, resources, advocacy, and professionalism, but we didn't like that acronym. 2, 3, 4. Okay. So if you have any questions, it's on our website. I really hate to ask the communications folks to do anymore, but I had this vision a few years ago of putting this on and then making it interactive with links and videos, and you could go on advocacy and it takes you right to the government affairs section, and then Lisa May is talking about the session wrap up and all that stuff. I'm looking at you. And, it still is up here, but, events have kind of intervened, and I'm not sure that's going to happen anytime soon, but that would be really cool. And I still have that on my list of things that I have dumped on Dan and the team, and I'm watching them to see. She's smiling. Thank you, Jackie. They're still smiling, so I guess I haven't killed them yet. But that would be really cool. And with that, I will end. And again, we'll take a lot of questions at the end. And we may have to cut it off. I mean, if there are too many things that we can't answer, then we're going to probably have to just defer some of those things. But we certainly are going to stay as long as people are willing to stay. Who was on the webinar? Was that last week? Was that a month ago? That was last month. That was a month ago. That was 6 years ago. 2 hours and 20 minutes, and there were still almost 400 people still on the call. At the height, it were 1,200 people on the webinar. By far there was one time we had more than that, but that didn't last. 1,200 people at the beginning. After the first hour, there were still 900 people. Into the second hour, there were still 800 people. When we had to cut it off, 2 hours and 20 minutes, there were still 350 people on the call. 2 hours and 47, 12 hours and 87 minutes later, there were still 2,000 people on the call. Point is, we understand, and you guys know, we are flooding you with information. But we also know, and Dan and his team are very, very conscious of the fact that it can be too much, right? So we're trying to find that sweet spot of giving information in an amount and in bite-sized pieces and in channels that you can get access to and that you can absorb. And we promise, because when you do a fire hose, most of it goes away and people don't absorb it. So we're really, really focusing on not just the messaging, but what it looks like, how it's delivered, and in what size pieces. So just be aware that we are very conscious of that. And if you see and we can do better, please let us know. Call me, email me, call Dan, email Dan, any of the leadership team. We are available, and I hope you know that we are responsive. I hope you know that. If you reach out to us, we will get back to you as soon as we can. And so that is our pledge to you, and we'll continue to do that. With that, Kathleen D'Artez, Director of Legal Affairs, will take you through just a couple things she has. Oh, and Diamond. Yay, Diamond.
All right. Good morning, everybody. Thanks for coming. It's a rainy day and, not a very far drive for some of us. So thanks, everybody, for coming. A very short drive for some of us, too. So we are happy about that. I want to just take a couple seconds before we started to make sure everyone has met Diamond Smith. She started with us a year ago. Yeah. And Diamond staffs a couple of our committees, the Real Property Operations Committee. We own the building, and Diamond is staffing that committee, and also the Commercial Alliance. So we had an event last week, and I was going to invite Diamond to talk about that and share some information on you. If any of you guys are commercial practitioners or people in your office are, listen up. Okay.
Thank you, Kathleen. Hi, everyone. Good morning now. So to give you an update, as Kathleen said, I'm the staff executive for the Commercial Alliance. Last week, we had the annual commercial symposium, which is our main hurrah in the commercial section. I'm very happy to report that we've been growing our commercial section. So we doubled our attendance numbers, tripled our sponsorships this year. So as Chuck touched on as well, with the settlement, it didn't affect the commercial side of things too much. But as we know with the bridge and the ship that just happened, that will be the next crisis to affect the commercial agents. But the settlement, if you guys have questions on that while we navigate and before we roll out the forms, I would suggest that you speak with your commercial affiliations and see how they've been navigating that field, because they have been negotiating in that way for quite some time. So, and also what we have coming up is a webinar. It'll be a commercial realtor toolbox webinar. So if you are interested in navigating or switching over to that area, hopefully I'll be there to guide you. So that webinar starts on April 23rd at 1 o'clock, and then we'll also have a couple of more webinars throughout the year. So thank you.
Great. Thanks, Simon. All right. Thank you. So we're going to go. I can kind of see the screen. I see the challenge now, Chuck. We're going to go ahead and start out about talking about the settlement, of course, and just to kind of reiterate some of the things that Chuck had said. There's a lot of moving pieces. I talk with my hands, so sorry in advance for this. Okay. There are a lot of moving pieces right now, and there are still some uncertainties and some gray areas. So we want to share information with you, but also I want to encourage all of you to come to us with questions as things develop. It might be a situation that someone hadn't thought of, or maybe someone asks you a question and you're not sure how to answer it. We may not have the answer, but we're speaking with Bright MLS all the time. We're speaking with NAR all the time. So bring us your questions and issues, and we will do our best to resolve them. And Chris, thank you for cheering staff and praising staff, but really, you guys are the heart of the organization, so we are here to serve you. So let us know what you need, what questions you have, and we'll attempt to help you work through those as best we can. So Chuck went through everything, pretty quickly about the settlement itself. And again, mid-July is kind of the target right now. That is possibly going to be delayed a little bit. A lot of the deadlines have been delayed so far. It's huge litigation. I mean, there's huge law firms involved. There's a ton of money. There's a ton of plaintiffs. The Home Services defendants just filed their motion for a new trial, and basically they're trying to have the verdict set aside. They filed those motions yesterday. So there's still a lot going on. Keller Williams filed something yesterday as well. So there's still a lot going on in the litigation itself. What the settlement agreement is, it provides a structure and a framework for all of us, basically, if we're going to, move forward, and the industry is going to change, right? I would just say, I know a lot of people are frustrated with this settlement agreement is terrible. Why did they do this? Why did they agree to this? Just to put that in perspective a little bit, remember we have the Department of Justice filing pleadings in other cases. I'm going to mispronounce the name. I have a mental block. Nozelek. I have a mental block on that name. I'm sorry. That's a case up in Massachusetts in federal court, and the Department of Justice filed a statement of interest in that case. And if you have read that statement of interest, or anybody in your company has, it's very clear that the Department of Justice does not want sellers or listing brokers in any way involved with paying compensation to the buyer's agent, period. They don't, it is like a Dr. Seuss. They don't want it here or there. They don't want it anywhere, right? Not on the MLS. They really don't. So that's kind of where they're coming from, right? That's where they're coming from. So if you keep that as your framework and your concept, this settlement agreement says, okay, you can't offer cooperative compensation on the MLS anymore, but you can still offer it. So maybe keep that in the back of your mind. That's a success, I guess. We're still going to be allowed to do it. The mechanics are just going to change. So I have a slide here. I can just kind of run through it. This is what NAR was saying. Basically, they wanted to protect that and preserve that right where the seller or listing broker could still be involved in providing compensation to the buyer's broker, period. That was one of their main objectives. And this settlement agreement did achieve that. That's still permissible, just not on the MLS, okay? And then again, mid-July, we've already touched on that. So the implications for members, it is hard to see that slide deck. There's still going to be, Chuck kind of touched on this as well, there's going to be multiple ways to obtain compensation. Essentially, there's different ways you can be compensated as well. It can still be a percentage of the sales price. It could be a flat fee. It could be a dollar amount. It could be a combination of both. Actually, one thing I will say today, please, when you guys start asking questions, nobody say a number. Right? Just because there's been a settlement agreement, the antitrust laws are not suspended or ignored. Antitrust laws still apply. I don't want to say it, but Chuck, you owe me $5 if somebody this afternoon says a number, right? So let's not do that. Say X or Y, say a percentage. And why? Everybody understand why we can't do that? We're competitors here. If somebody up here stands up and says, we charge X percent, that could be construed as price fixing. So that's why we don't say numbers. At your office, in your brokerage, talk all you want, do math, do calculations. You can say a number, you can say a dollar amount. In your company, that's permitted. That's not an antitrust violation. But we're all competitors, all affiliated with different companies. So do not do that today, okay? All right, we should have started out with that. All right, so the implications for members, basically, we're still going to be able to, the listing side, seller side will still be able to offer compensation, just not on the MLS. There's, compensation can be a variety of formats, as we just discussed. And again, the key point is that compensation is negotiable, right? And that's one of the changes that we're going to see on the forms. Let me see the main thing. Yeah, Chuck, you touched on this as well, too. The settlement agreement does still say that sellers can offer seller concessions. So that, I believe, can still be shown on Bright MLS. I'm going to defer to them on that, but that's my understanding. That could still be shown on Bright MLS. But you can't say this seller concession is going to be used to pay the buyer's broker. That's not permissible. Nothing on the MLS can be used to indicate that you're going to be paying the buyer's broker, period. We've had a couple questions on a legal hotline. How about if we do this? How about if we create a new website? There was someone who asked a question and was unhappy with my answer. The question was, how about if we create a new website? The settlement agreement does say, if I'm a broker, on my website, I can put a compensation for my listings only. So the question that came in on a legal hotline, well, how about if a bunch of us get together and we create a new website? Can all of us put our offers of compensation on that website? Everybody in here knows the answer, right? The answer is no, you cannot do that. That's just basically an MLS substitute. The gentleman who asked it didn't like my answer. I said, well, just to be 100%, I will go touch base with NAR and get a response from NAR. And NAR, of course, said, no, that is not permissible. And if you attempt to do so, they would have to cut off the IDX feed. So whoever's thinking about that, shut that one down, start to think about something else. That's not permissible. We have to follow the settlement agreement, right? Chuck had touched on a couple of these things already. Let me see, we'll go through these. Preserve the choices, we have that already. Written agreements, again, Chuck touched on that a little bit. I will say honestly, everybody listen up. Us here in Maryland, if you want to represent a buyer, Maryland law does require a written buyer agency agreement if you're going to represent the buyer. So this should not be earth-shattering to everybody here. This should be something that we're doing already. The law changed here in Maryland in 2016. So we are better positioned than a lot of other states. I spoke with NAR yesterday, and he told me that question I asked him was routine. He's getting some off-the-wall questions from other states and people who are not used to doing this. I think the message for all of us and the takeaway is we all need to tighten up a little bit. If a buyer's agent is a little bit uncomfortable with having the compensation conversation and they maybe delay it, show some homes, and then finally get the buyer agency agreement signed right before they submit an offer, that should really stop. The settlement agreement does say, if it says working with, I'm going to interpret that as representing. If you're representing a buyer, you should have a signed buyer agency agreement in place before you show the home, right? Everybody think about that. If you have not been doing that, talk to your broker, as Chuck had said, talk to your office manager, team leader, practice role-playing. How can I explain this to a buyer? What kind of hesitation, or concerns do they have? And I don't even like to talk about this, but you can do a buyer agency agreement for 24 hours. You can do a buyer agency agreement for one property. Part of me doesn't like to encourage that because it makes it easier for them to terminate the agreement, and we are a member organization, but that's reality. If you're meeting with somebody who's hesitant to sign something, They can sign something for 24 hours. That's one way that you could, maybe work with that buyer, have a signed agreement in place, and then show the property. So there are things that we can be doing. This is the same thing, before MLS participants acting for buyers. This is the settlement agreement, basically. Required to enter into written agreements with their buyers before touring a home. And again, this is we're all familiar with this. That is the document that creates the brokerage relationship. That is the document that establishes your fiduciary duty. That person is now your client. You owe the fiduciary duty to them. So all kinds of reasons why we want to have that in place. And I think the practical reason for everybody in here in this room is, am I going to get paid? How much am I going to get paid? Who's going to pay me, right? That's a conversation you should be having with your buyer at your buyer consultation meeting, when you're going to present the buyer agency agreement to them and explain to them how it works. And your buyers need to understand it. I think the reality of this, as everyone here recognizes fully, I'm sure, not every buyer has an extra little pot of gold. If the seller or listing broker is not offering compensation to the buyer's broker, does your buyer have the ability to pay you if they have to pay out of pocket? Not every buyer does. Some do, many do. A move-up buyer or someone who's has some financial resources, their family has some resources, they might be fine. There is going to be a negative impact on some first-time home buyers, first-generation home buyers, lower income, maybe moderate income people. It's going to be more of a challenge. VA buyers as well. I think we have to acknowledge that might be a challenge as well. And I hope, again, to chime on what Chuck had said, I hope that the result is not far more unrepresented buyers. I'm sure that's not the intent, but anyway, that might be something we see down the road. I'm not going to predict. We will do our best to make sure there are not a lot of unrepresented buyers. I think everyone agrees buyer representation is a good thing, and I think we just need to step up our game maybe and make sure that we're explaining things clearly. This is just Maryland law here again, to kind of reinforce that the settlement agreement is not really inconsistent with Maryland law. The things that it requires are already part of our Brokers Act. So this is just a little refresher, I think, for everybody here. The brokerage relationship commences at the time they enter into the brokerage agreement, right? And then continues until a date of termination set forth in the agreement. As I had mentioned earlier, that could be 24 hours if you have a cautious, commitment-averse buyer. That could be it. Completion of performance, the date of expiration agreed upon. So I'm not even going to go into too much detail there. I'm teaching Brad tomorrow afternoon. So that's it. All right, the brokerage agreement. This is, again, the brokerage agreement. There has to be specificity in the brokerage agreement. And again, this has been Maryland law for a while. This is not new. I highlighted the second two because those two provisions are essentially contained in the settlement agreement. So again, it's consistent with Maryland law. Written agreement is required. Certain things have to be in the written agreement, right? It does have to state the amount of compensation to be paid and whether the broker is authorized to receive that compensation from someone other than the client. So that's going to be the buyer agency agreement, right? And that language is already in our agreement. Everyone should be comfortable with explaining that to their clients already. And the next one, state whether the broker is authorized to cooperate with other brokers and share compensation. The amount of the compensation, again, that would be our listing agreement, right? I'm the listing broker meeting with you, seller. Are you going to authorize me to provide compensation to the buyer side? And again, you guys know this. Most of you have been doing this for years. I think there's, it depends on your client. You may want to explain it. If you got a lawyer, an engineer, a reader, right? You got a lawyer, an engineer as your client, you're going to explain it in a different way. I think in general, it really isn't that complicated. You're going to, well, easy for me to say, right? You're going to meet with your seller. Here's the total number. This is the compensation that you're going to pay in this transaction. Now, I could keep all of that myself. Hey, but seller, I don't think that's in your best interest. I think it's in your best interest for me to share some of that with the buyer's agent. You okay with that, seller? That really is what it comes down to. I mean, it depends on your seller. It could be, more nuance in that, but that's basically the gist of it, right? So that's the listing side there. We'll go to the next one here. Yeah, this is just a summary of the settlement agreement. I don't think I need to spend too much time on this. Chuck did a good job. The one thing I will mention, this is something that we were seeing here in Maryland, right? The amount of compensation set forth in your brokerage agreement, the term or the phrase that's used in the settlement agreement, it has to be objectively ascertainable and may not be open-ended, right? Which we have been teaching for a while. We shouldn't be saying per MLS. Well, we can't now, but no one should have been saying that anyway, right? Per MLS or putting zero down. Oh, you guys remember Al Munschauer? Al Munschauer is trained on that and taught on that for years. So you have to put a number in your brokerage agreements, right? A number or a dollar amount, a percentage. You're not going to put per MLS. You're not going to say whatever the seller offers, right? It has to be a number. Oh, was that the joke? But you know. All right, so that's it. The next point here, the realtor may not receive compensation for brokerage services from any source that exceeds the amount agreed to in the agreement with the buyer. That's something I guess people have asked questions about. That is set forth in the settlement agreement, right? Whatever your amount that you've agreed to in the buyer agency agreement, if for some reason the seller and or listing broker are offering more than that, you are no longer allowed to keep the excess, which is what, I don't know if everybody even is aware of that. That's what our document did say previously, that you could keep the excess. Okay. And this next one here, you can't represent that your brokerage services are free or available at no cost unless you will truly receive no compensation from any source. And again, that has been in place for a while too. That should not have been happening. I know, we all know there's some buyer agents who say, well, just go ahead and sign this. You're not paying me. The money's going to come from the seller side. So it's basically free for you, or it's at no cost to you. That has violated NAR's Code of Ethics. Do I have that slide in here? The next one, I think. That has violated NAR's Code of Ethics for a couple years. NAR's Code of Ethics has said clearly you should not be saying that your services are free or at no cost to your client unless you truly are not getting 1 penny from anybody, right? So if anybody is saying that, obviously they have to stop that immediately as well. Well, I guess you have till mid-July to work on stopping that. But really, it shouldn't be happening anyway. It violates NAR's current Code of Ethics, so it shouldn't be happening. And the next bullet point down here, the final one, must disclose in conspicuous language that commissions are not set by law and are fully negotiable. Everyone in the statewide forms committee has already seen that. I don't know if I should admit this, but our agreement previously did not include the word negotiable, believe it or not. But we will be adding the word negotiable to our listing agreement and our buyer agency agreement. So the next version that's released, you'll see the word negotiable in there. And conspicuous, what it bold, underlined, that's what we've done with that. I hope that's conspicuous. All right, so again, this is just another thing maybe to make people feel more comfortable. You know, buyers may have heard about this lawsuit and may have questions, and this again is in the Brokers Act, Maryland Brokers Act. Payment or promise of payment by a seller, lessor, whatever, is not determinative of whether a brokerage relationship has been created or exists, does not create or determine the existence of a brokerage relationship between a broker, seller, lessor, buyer, lessee. So if the buyer's thinking like, wait a minute, if the seller's paying, aren't you really going to be more interested in the seller? Aren't you really representing the seller? No. Maryland law does not say that, right? So just keep that in your back pocket. You might need to bring that out if you have, again, a lawyer or an engineer, someone who's a reader. Yep, a reader. They're the worst. All right. So this is kind of just some practical advice, some common sense advice. And this, again, to the brokers, office managers, team leaders, and actually every licensee in here, every realtor in here, know your worth. And I think that's kind of the key. If you've been a buyer agent meeting with a buyer this afternoon to show them some properties, maybe you're a little hesitant about the compensation. I don't want to come across like a used car salesman. I'm going to develop the relationship first before we start talking about money. I know we still have sub-agency. I don't disagree with you, Chuck, but I'm just staying a little adjacent to that and say I would strongly encourage everybody to use buyer agency agreements and really have that conversation with the buyer. And again, with your buyer one-on-one, you can do math. You can say a number and let them know this is the compensation that you're going to earn. This is what they're going to pay on that transaction, and say that number with confidence. You know, you bring a lot of value. You're going to help them do a lot of things. You're going to negotiate repairs. You might know about grant programs that they're not familiar with. There's all kinds of things that a buyer agent brings to the table, a ton. So I think that that's part of it too. Go into those meetings prepared, go in confident, know what you're going to say, and seriously discuss compensation. And again, as we just mentioned earlier, your buyer may not have the ability to pay you out of pocket. So that's something we're kind of working through with our forms too, how we're going to address that situation. But that's something that will have to be addressed. And you know, if they don't have the money, they don't have the money, right? You're going to have to figure out and explain options. This is kind of the same. I think we kind of touched on these already. NAR Code of Ethics, I mentioned that before. That's the bottom one there. Don't say your services are free or at no cost unless you're truly receiving no compensation. that is that. So this is what we were going to talk about. This is what we spoke about at the last regional roundtable. We actually had sampled of the forms up, and we were able to share that. We were just about to, they were going to be released on April 1st, which is April Fool's Day. Maybe that was our mistake. But we honestly, Taylor was about to send them out to our forms vendors the day the settlement agreement was released. So Chuck was like, halt the presses, stop the presses. So the forms that we talked about did have to be tweaked a little bit to be consistent with the language of the settlement agreement. So those have been pulled back. People in here who are on the statewide forms committee, the statewide forms committee will be meeting next week. And what happens, the process, if everybody doesn't know, the statewide forms committee meets, they review the proposed forms, or they make suggestions. We like this, we don't like this, and the whole committee votes. And then if they vote to do something, it has to go before the executive committee. And the executive committee will, give it the thumbs up or the thumbs down, or sometimes this, modify it a little bit, but that's the process. And time frame, just think about it, it's April now. This settlement agreement will take place mid-July, end of July. So you're not going to see new forms next week. Right? The current forms are going to continue until these new processes kick into place, because the new forms will not refer to compensation on the MLS, right? The current forms do refer to broker-to-broker compensation on the multiple list. So we are going to have, you'll still see the old forms for a little while, and again, they'll be replaced by these new forms July-ish. Can we okay with that? July-ish? All right. Yeah? Okay. Unless something changed in the 10 minutes we've been up here. All right. So that's the forms that we're talking about, or the concept, I guess we can talk about. I can't share anything. It hasn't gone through that process yet. But we're going to change. There are going to be a couple of changes to the listing agreement. One, it's going to say compensations are negotiable. So I think that's not controversial. The compensation paragraph is being changed a little bit. I think it's going to be more clear for sellers. There are going to be 3 boxes they can check. Compensation to the listing broker, right, is going to be a percentage of the sales price. That's one option. The second option will be a dollar amount. The third option is a combination of both, a percentage of the sales price plus a dollar amount. So the seller is going to check one of those boxes. You're going to talk to your seller. You're going to complete that. You're not going to say per MLS. You're not going to say whatever. You're going to put in an actual percentage or an actual number there, right? And then the next down, I think it's 2 paragraphs down, where we talk about cooperative compensation, offering compensation to the buyer side, to the buyer's broker. There's information in there, again, for you to discuss with your seller. You can offer compensation to a cooperating broker or sub-agent, and there's blanks to be filled in there. They're going to authorize you to share compensation or not. And again, this is a conversation all of you guys will have to practice and be able to explain to a seller. I mean, I think someone's first response would be, great, I don't have to pay them. Yay, more for me. I mean, I'm a lawyer, that's how we act in law school. That's how we're trained to think. But I think really you have to be able to have that conversation with your seller. That may be in your best interest. It may narrow the pool of buyers who are able to look at your property. And for buyers who are, first-time home buyers or people who are selling an entry-level home, it's going to make the housing is going to be less affordable for buyers, because they're going to have to go out of pocket to pay that amount. So, be prepared to explain that with your client and show them how that works. And it may be to their advantage. It may not be to their advantage. And everybody should be comfortable with that and get comfortable with that if you're not. So that was one of the changes in there, 2 of the changes in there. The other thing, we did add a signature space, initial space, for the seller to initial the compensation paragraphs. And again, just talking about you guys giving us feedback, that was a suggestion made by someone. I had taught a CE class in Howard County, and after class, a guy came up and suggested that. He's like, you know what, it might be a good idea to add. And I was like, oh my God, it's a great idea. I texted Taylor and Chuck immediately, yeah, let's do this. So keep your suggestions coming in. So there will be a space for the client to initial the compensation paragraph, showing that they read it, they understand it, and the instructions they've given to you on whether you can share, whether you can offer cooperation, and how much you can offer. So that's one of the changes. One thing that we spent an hour and a half, or a good part of an hour and a half, talking about yesterday, think this through. If there's no MLS, how is a buyer's agent going to know whether compensation is being offered and what the amount of that compensation is? That's, I think, the tricky piece of this. So what we're contemplating now, again, this is concept. This is not set in stone. This is subject to a lot of committees and a lot of approval still. But the thought is that we would create a 1-page document to be signed probably by the seller and the listing agent, I guess the buyer's broker as well, that the seller is offering compensation, this percentage or this dollar amount. And the thought is that that one pager would be shared with a buyer's broker or buyer's agent, so they would know what the offer of compensation is. So, Statewide Forums Committee, I'm sure will chime in on that. They may have some suggestions, but that's kind of what we're thinking about. So that's. I know. But these are what the new rules, what we're dealing with. We just have to try and navigate it, right? So that's on the listing side. The buyer agency agreement, same thing. There's going to be corresponding changes. The word negotiable is going to be in there. The compensation paragraphs, it's going to show that there's 3 options. The key there, the buyer's agent should put in a definite dollar amount, a definite percentage or dollar amount. They're not going to say per MLS, right? And then that's where you have to have the real conversation with your buyer about whether they have the ability to pay that. If the listing side, the seller is not offering compensation, hey buyer, do you have the ability to pay? And you can do math with your client. You can say a number, to make them think about it. It's probably, some of you are having this conversation routinely already. For those of you who are not, again, this might be something you want to practice and get used to, because the buyer needs to understand how it works. There's no attorney. You don't go meet with an attorney and walk out where, the attorney's wondering, gosh, are they going to pay me? How much do you think they're going to pay me? So it's just something that we have to kind of work through and just get familiar doing. And I think, again, Dan's department, he's going to talk about this in a little bit, but our messaging and communications to consumers, everybody should know that Maryland law requires a signed buyer agency agreement. And we'll do our best to get that message out there. Hopefully all of you are explaining that already and your clients are aware of that already. So, hopefully that won't be a huge, big change. But that was the buyer agency agreement. And then we were going to have an addendum also to the contract. That was, again, contemplated, the contract of sale, right? If the listing agent is offering, listing broker / seller, either one of them, right? Say there's 0 being offered. The buyer has some ability to pay some money. They want to purchase this home. Their ability to pay compensation to you is not the entire amount that you've agreed to. So they're going to need to find compensation from some other source. The thought process here is we could utilize an addendum to the contract of sale where the buyer is asking the seller to make a contribution towards paying the buyer's broker. And I know anybody in here who's been on grievance or professional standards, you're thinking like, wait a minute, doesn't that violate the code of ethics? No. And Chuck, I know Chuck went all the way up to NAR just to confirm this, so we do have confirmation. It doesn't violate the code of ethics because it's between the buyer and the seller. If the buyer's agent was trying to use the contract as a way to renegotiate their compensation, that's going to be a problem. They're putting their wallet ahead of their fiduciary duty to their client. So that would be problematic. But the buyer is allowed to ask the seller directly. So again, we may tweak it based on what the Statewide Forums Committee and Executive Committee recommend, but that's one of the other options to kind of pin down compensation. I think, did I have anything else? Is that really it? That's really it. Questions later, not now.
I do, if I may.
Sure.
Real quick before you switch. Thank you. So just, if you're like me, you're writing your questions and then you're thinking about them and then you're not going to be listening to everybody else. So we are going to hold questions, but I want to tell you there's a couple of things, or 3 things that I definitely want to talk about later. They are, number 1, what does negotiable mean? So I will tell you very quickly what my position is. Whatever you charge, you can charge within your company. That's your fee, that's your commission. You do not have to negotiate that. That is not what negotiable means. That has nothing to do with price fixing. So when people say, well, you charge this, but I want to negotiate you down to something else, you do not have to do that. Let's be really clear about what negotiable means, and we can talk about that in greater detail later. The other is this whole notion of agency. About 10 years ago, we sort of started this discussion about whether agency is even a thing we should have in real estate. And Al Monschauer and I used to talk about this all the time. Both of us agreed for years, decades if not, that agency is probably wrong for real estate? Why do we have to have this fiduciary duty? And we started to talk about transactional brokerage that they have in a lot of states. And NAR is dealing with those states in terms of the written agreement, et cetera, in the context of transactional brokerage. So maybe that's a conversation we can also have that would eliminate some of the complications involved in this back and forth about brokerage agreements and agency relationships and all that. And maybe we could look at a model that involves transactional brokerage. And again, we can talk about that a little bit later. And the last thing I want to say, and before I turn it back over, sorry, Kathleen, is especially in the context of VA buyers, but the thing that Kathleen also mentioned about not having to work for free, right? So again, there's a deeper conversation to have, especially in the context of a buyer, or not even whether it's a VA buyer or a regular buyer, who is adamant that they want to see and pursue a home for which no compensation is being offered, and they say they can't afford to compensate you. What do you have to do in those situations? Do you still have to represent a person and spend hours and hours and hours of your time without the prospect of getting paid? And I will give you a little hint. The answer is no, you don't. Now, how you go about that and what that involves is obviously going to be complicated, but again, for the Q&A, those are three things that I want to explore in greater detail and after lunch. But I just wanted to put those out there so you can put them aside for now and give the rest of our presenters your full attention. So thanks. Sorry, Kathleen. Thanks.
Hello, everybody. How are you? Let's see.
Hi, Dan.
Hi. Did I just turn it off? Oh, there we go. Well, I do this every time, so let's do it again. I'll take a nice group picture here. So it's going to be a little bit of a panoramic. And of course, we get Diana, of course, and Jackie. Keep your hand up there. Oh, keep your hand up there.
Everybody wave.
Okay, wave. Say hi. Say hi. Say nothing new is happening in real estate. Gotta wait to get Chris. There's Chuck. There's Chuck. There's Yolanda and Cheryl, and there's Chris. Chris, give us the details. There we go. Awesome. I think we got that. We did. Hi. Awesome. Well, we got that underway. Yeah, I'm Dan Petrell of the Strategic Communications Department, and we are the team that really is dedicated to really getting the word out to you, communicating on a variety of fronts, communicating what our wonderful team here at Maryland Realtors is doing, whether it's legal, whether it's Susan in professional development, whether it's advocacy, et cetera. Everything that we're doing has a need to be pushed out to our membership, and that's what this department does. And the nice thing is that we have a wonderful team that helps us put this together. First of all, thank you for being here. And the person responsible largely for making this event happen is Angel Brandt, our program and events manager. And let's give her a big applause. Thank you, Angel, if you can hear this. Really, she is doing a wonderful job. She has so many events. We had Lobby Day earlier this year. We had, she was working very closely with Diamond on the Commercial Symposium, which was a big success. And we have lots of other events coming up, like our big annual conference. And I see Martha, who's helping out on that. How you doing, Martha? She's a crucial part of this team. Events is an important way that we communicate to you face-to-face. We bring other experts to you who speak to you face-to-face. And it's just a wonderful way to network, engage, and really become together as a real estate community in Maryland. We also have Kelly Beard, our content specialist. Yep. She is here today, but she is in another room. Oh, she's done. She was in an NAR webinar, so she had to divide our time. It's also Kelly's birthday, so let's all wish her a happy birthday. Happy birthday, Kelly. Kelly manages our social media, our webinars. She has done a big hand in really progressing our brand appearance, our brand identity. I mean, even the slide deck really has really upped our game in how we look, how we present, and Kelly, you're a big part of that, so thank you for that. And then our final member of our team is a shared position. We share her with advocacy, and her mom is here today, too. Jackie Moek. She is our advocacy and comms administrator, and I will also say, in addition to being a really good writer, which is important, she is a dream on the website. So we redesigned our website last year, but I'm going to be honest with you, it really came to light and really came to its own life with Jackie being here. So she's really prompt, she gets things up on time. The big thing, especially with everything that's happening in this industry today, we do have, I'm sure most of you realize this, an NAR proposed settlement resource page. And you can get to that on our website. I think the first splash image, it gets you to that page. We're keeping that current. So, all the information that's coming forward on this proposed settlement, well, let me put it a better way, because Chuck was right, a curated development of information. We put that out there to keep you in the loop with the best information possible. Chuck has said something else before too, and I think this is really important. We might not be first in getting the information out to you, but the information we do provide will be correct. And one of the reasons I can say that very comfortably is that we collaborate well with each department. So, we're not just putting words out from the communications department. We're talking with Kathleen, we're talking with Chuck, we're talking with leadership, and getting all this input before we put something out. So, it really is a team message that's being developed. And we work, I kind of insinuated this before, we are working with every department in this association, and beyond this association, we're working with the consumer through MarylandHomeownership.com, and we're going to be upping our game in what we communicate to our consumers in light of the proposed settlement. And we're doing a lot of work with the media. Chris and I have been doing a lot of work with various media operations. We have I don't want to go into too much detail, but we're supposed to have a television interview tomorrow. Later on, another television station wants to do a sit-down with us. So we are getting the word out. We're engaging the media. We're even responding in a positive way to some of the misstatements that are out there in the media. I mean, just to put it out there, the Washington Post ran 2 editorials back-to-back, March 20th and March 21st. And both of them had a lot of misinformation in there. So we've been actually, again, it's been a collaborative effort. We've been putting together a response, and we'll be sending that out ideally tomorrow, knock on wood, to the Post. Now, hopefully, they'll publish it. Let's all keep our fingers crossed. We don't own the ink, they do. So we hope to see that in print soon. And we have a lot of channels that we work with, and this is important too, because not everybody consumes their media the same way everybody else does. Some of a lot of people love our magazine. Our magazine is beloved, and it's something that we continue to push out, and we love getting it out there. But there are others, other generations who might like the more digital approach, are looking at stuff on their phone, or looking at our website and information on our website. So we have a variety of channels here, so that however you consume your information, we have a means to get out to you, whether it's magazine, our e-newsletter, which used to be called the Hot Sheet, now the Maryland Realtor Report, webinars, of course, including our big 1,400 member webinar that we just did on that Friday a couple weeks ago. Get Real Estate podcast hosted by CEO Chuck Caskey, social media, media relations, events, websites, mdrealtor.org, MarylandHomeownership.com. We are, 24/7 getting our word out. Even when we're not in the office, this messaging is going out. So let's look at some of our specific channels. Up here is Maryland Realtor Report. I didn't put a slide here, this is my bad, about our magazine. Our magazine is something that we love, our members love, and I call upon members of our audience here who are experts. If you want to write an article, if you think you have important information to share with our membership about something that's important, that you think is important educationally or whatever. I mean, Linda Douglas last year wrote a wonderful column for us from a broker's perspective. If you have ideas like that, talk to me. Either, talk to me today, email me, call me, whatever. We like getting guest columnists in there. We like getting unique story ideas in there. So please avail yourself of that. In addition to our experts like Kathleen or Chuck or Susan, we do like to get our members contributing to the magazine. But going to a Maryland Realtor Report, our hot sheet, well, I can't call it hot sheet anymore. It's difficult not to call it hot sheet. We just started with this new service called Note Router. Our open rate since we started is at 19.5%. We think we can get that up there. I think we're looking, hopefully, targeting maybe a 30% opening rate. So that's what we're gearing toward. We have a nice click-through rate, 13.7%. Usually the click-through rate is about 1%, maybe 3%, so that we're getting 13% is suggesting that, our members are engaged in what we're putting out there, which means a lot to us. The hot sheet itself, there I go again, the Maryland Realtor Report again, I don't know, the e-newsletter is really about getting information and getting resources out to our memberships. So a lot of it is about events, and you're going to see a lot of information about webinars, local events. Our local boards who are here, if you have events that are open to the membership, the general membership of Maryland Realtors, contact Kelly and get your event information to us, and we will include that in the next hot sheet. But we're putting in there, downloadables, whether it's the housing statistics, whether it's advice from the legal department, et cetera, GRI offerings, et cetera. Anything that's downloadable or resource information-wise, you can get it in the latest hot sheet. So we encourage you to, if you're not opening it, open it. Our website, I talked about, really it's new and improved. I mentioned the resource page, that's important. And also, it's just been more responsive lately, which I love. We have a very active blog that's going out now. Now, one of the things we do with the blog is that we repurpose magazine articles in there so that other people who aren't reading the magazine can avail themselves of the article. But we also have blogs in there that were not appearing in the magazine. And the latest one, Kathleen wrote one, which I would encourage you to read, is basically how to follow the Maryland law as a buyer's agent. Important stuff. So please read that. And, again, Jackie is keeping it up with all the things that are out there. I will tell you right now, our volunteer page has opened. I don't think any of us have talked about that yet. We rely on you as volunteers on our committees to help drive our business, drive our the projects that we're doing, help focus our attention, et cetera. I have the honor of serving on 2 committees, our conference and events committee. I see Martha here. I don't know if anybody else here is on that committee. They are a wonderful group, and they are a font of information, and they are really helping to drive this conference in a new and exciting direction. And then we also work with the Communications Committee, and I will tell you that we are talking about the proposed settlement and what we should do as an association to communicate to 4 distinct audiences: members, brokers, consumers, and the media. And the messaging is going to be different on each one. It might be subtle, but the messaging is different. There we go with that. Social media, we are growing our social media again. Kelly is just getting a lot of information out. It's also not getting a lot of information out. It's about managing the stream as well, so you're not oversaturating people with information, and you're trying to make it lively with graphics and video when we have it. But the proof is here. We have We're growing. Our followers are now followers on Facebook are more than 13,000, LinkedIn more than 1,500, 55 new followers in the last 28 days. Our engagement is up, our reach is up, visits are up. So we're pretty happy with this, and this is a great tool. Here's what I'm going to ask of you. Share our information, share our social media posts, comment on them. When you do that, you're expanding our reach to your members or to the people who follow you as well. And the more we can do that, the more we can raise the profile of our messaging. So we'd ask that you help us out there. And we are doing a lot on video. We have, I don't know if you've seen our Missing Middle video. This was something that we did early in the year to help push the middle housing advocacy efforts that are going on in Annapolis right now. And I'll let advocacy talk about all that, but that was a very successful video. And the other video that we did recently was our member value video. It's long, it's 12 minutes, I admit that, but we've also broken it down into sections. So if you did want to understand the value that advocacy brings, you can focus in on that. If you want to look at the strength of obviously our legal department, that is one of the biggest member values we have, our hotline, all the legal advice they get, we would explain that as well. Follow these QR codes, watch our videos. You're going to see a lot more coming out. And I'm sure we'll probably be doing video as well on this settlement once we crystallize our messaging. And yes, we are the department that does housing stats. We try to get them out in like the first 2 weeks of the month. We act very quickly once we get the information from our provider, Showing Time. And then we get it out here. We get it to our members and the Maryland Realtor Report, formerly known as the Hot Sheet. Excuse me, I don't have water, my voice is going. We'll get it out to our members, but we also get this out every month to the media. And this does generate news requests, requests for interviews, et cetera. And it's very important that we keep doing this. And, a lot of the people are picking up our news, USA Today, Gannett. We had a lot of press coverage from our last Lobby Day event. And we're getting a lot of attention now because of the proposed settlement. So we strive to get our information to every corner of the state. So we're delighted when the Cumberland Times News publishes us, because that helps, our members out in Cumberland, Garrett maybe, and other areas out there. And let's go back to our events. Let's save the dates. Well, let's forget about Commercial Symposium, but actually, Diamond, do we have the date for next year?
March 20th.
March 20th, save the date. March 20th is our next Commercial Symposium. 2025. God, that's scary to say. Yeah. Regional Roundtable. Well, save the date, Regional Roundtable. We don't have the dates for next year yet, but I can guarantee you we'll be doing these again next year. Pride and Practice. Susan will talk more about that, but that's coming June 11th. That registration is opening later in April?
17th.
Okay. So that will come out soon. And then the big kahuna, of course, is the 2024 annual conference, Back to the Beach. We're going back to the Ocean City. We got some. So you notice we got a little bit of a Jimmy Buffett vibe there going. So pack your Hawaiian shirts, and straw hats, and let's have some fun. And I will say this, the chair, Jen Klarman, the vice chair, Scott Johnson, and Angel, they are cooking up something that is completely different than what we've done before, and I think it's going to be exciting, and we're very excited once we can roll out more information, we will be doing that. We're looking at opening registration a lot sooner than before, so look for that coming soon, and we're very excited about it. But it's September 16th through the 19th in Ocean City at the Convention Center. That's all I got. Oh, thank you. And I'm going to bring it to Susan.
Networking. It's all about getting out there and meeting new real estate agents, getting new ideas, and really and truly not feeling so alone.
Being able to say you're not alone in this business and giving a boost of confidence that from people that are saying, you've got this, you can do this. And we needed it.
I love the opportunities like this to be able to get together with people and stay on top of what's going on in the industry.
Oh, my favorite part is the networking. I just love talking to people like-minded. They're in this field, they understand the field.
So I learned from other real estate professionals who are at the top of their game so that I can also learn, grow, and build my business.
I was not gonna miss this one. I seen the email, I said, let's get it. They got another conference going on. I'm in there.
It's awesome here. Like, it's my first year and I'm having the time of my life.
Get yourself surrounded with people who think big, who act big, and who are quick to encourage you and support you. Get on committees, get involved.
Want to be part of something. This is part of, it's what we do. We're part of the community. It's your real estate community. It's why you should be part of it.
Save the dates.
Well, I feel like you just stole my thunder, right? Thanks a lot. No, it's last year was my first conference, and it was so much fun. I was very, very grateful to the comms team for not putting up the pictures of my department dancing. So thank you. I didn't thank you last time. I'm going to throw my glamour shots up here and tell you who I am. Susan Yashinsky. I am the Director of Professional Development and Member Engagement. I want Diana Quincy, my right hand, to stand up so everybody can see her. This is the one who does 90% of the work that I am constantly throwing y'all at. She's fantastic. She's only been with us 6 months, and she already knows more than me, and I've got 18 months in. So then Sandy Frazier is not with us today, but she runs all of our professional standards programs, which we'll get into later. So we have a great team, and we're here to serve y'all. So if you need anything, call us. Even if we can't answer it, we'll get back to you. Okay, so what do? Our department is a little bit of everything. We handle the education, so we do the Realtor, we'll start out there with the Realtor GRI, the Leadership Academy, the Housing Opportunity Certification, and the Maryland Residential Property Management, sorry, typo on my part, certification. So let's just start out with the GRI. For those of you who don't know, this is the Graduate Realtor Institute. It's basically what we're going to call a master's in real estate education. Why would you want to do this? It's just taking your degree to the next level. You all learn all the time, but this consolidates your learning into one great designation. It gives you another 72 hours of credit for the 100 and 200 series. And, I wanted to tell you, we had a GRI class last week on environmental law, and it was unbelievable. The class was like, why don't I know this stuff? I've been doing real estate for 20 years. I didn't know that. So there's always something to learn, and what you don't know really can hurt you. So I encourage you all to continue your education, and for those that you mentor. How do you do this? First of all, it's all virtual. So you don't have to drive down to Maryland. You don't have to drive 2 hours out of your way. Everything is virtual. We've gone that way because we tried hybrid and no one was showing up in person. So I know y'all are busy. We're going virtual. And it's been going very well. So again, to complete the designation, you take the 100-200 series. But if you're going after your broker's license, the 300-400 series gives you the 135 credits that you need to be able to take the test for Maryland. I would say that the way our program runs is a little bit different. You can take the GRI classes over a 5-year period instead of, if you're deciding to go get your broker's license and take the test, that you finish everything within a year and then you have a year to take it. You've got 5 years this way, and then when you've completed the 400, the last class from 400, then you've got another year to take the test. We always do a broker's prep at the end. That's always very popular. So that's the GRI for us. And now let's talk about the Leadership Academy. I love it. I am going to make you guys stand up because you need to move around anyway. So who here has done Leadership Academy? And I see you back there, so in case you couldn't tell, I love this program. I love it. It's one of my favorite things that I get to do. And what it is it's just a way to enhance your leadership skills. And it becomes a pipeline for your association to call on you to help guide this industry. So if you are passionate about this industry, which everybody in here is, then take a second, think about this. The classes, there's 7 months of this, so it is a commitment. It's once a month. You do have to drive down to Maryland, so I'll tell you that right now. But it's totally worthwhile. The classes and the speakers that we have teach are amazing. I would say talk to anybody that you just stood standing up. We even have some people who are currently in the class with us today, and I think that you'll learn a lot from them. And I want to say all of that because the applications are going to open up the first week in May. So I encourage all of you, if you're interested in joining and making a difference in this industry, especially at such a vital time, to take a moment to look at it and think if it's right for you. Okay, we also do the Housing Opportunity Certification. And what this is it basically just gives you a greater knowledge and understanding of the programs that are out there so you can help your clients. The 4 classes are all given in one day. All of these classes are given at your local association, so check the calendars. If it's not currently on the schedule, ask them to reach out to me and we will set it up for your area and your local board. It's really in-depth knowledge on the federal and national initiatives, state and local. You get the Maryland Mortgage Program, which I believe most of you take anyway, and then there's an understanding credit. It really breaks everything down. There's some great instructors on there. I encourage all of you to do that as well. It also, at the end of it, once you've taken all 4 classes and gotten your certification, you are listed on the referral site on the marylandhomeownership.org.com site, so that people can find you. They actively promote that to consumers, so it's just an additional benefit for you. To renew this, in case any of you out there already have your certification, you need to take the Maryland Mortgage Program. After 2 years, we'll send you an email and let you know if you're due. And so you need to take that one and then one of the other courses. It can be anything you want. Plus, if you've taken the Freddie Mac course, that counts for as well. You can go to our website and learn more about that. But then that's every 2 years after that. Okay. The Maryland Residential Property Management. I will let you know, this is so popular. I have 800 people on a waiting list waiting for me to hold the next class. So we have 300 spots available. It is going to, registration for this is going to open next Tuesday. Last year when we did this, it sold out in an hour. And I say sell out, it's free. It was free. I'm sorry. We're charging $25 for it this year because we want to make it available to everybody and want you to have a commitment to join us. So $25, you can come in person. We're going to hold it at the office for the first 75 that want to do it, and then we'll have 300 spots online. So don't miss that. I have people trying to swing around the back door and register for it already. What this one does is, in the state of Maryland, you don't have to, property managers don't have to be licensed. So this is basically what you need to know to keep yourself from getting in trouble. So I highly encourage you to take these courses as well. Let's see. I also our department works and does the DEI, the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion. We work with the advisory group since, I have a shameless plug. It is probably one of the most fun committees you could be on, so we run that in our department. I encourage all of you to volunteer for that as well. And what do? They do a lot. In fact, they do a lot more than I even want them to because we have to pare them back because if we did everything they wanted to do in a year, I would do nothing else. So, incredibly active. This year, I'm really excited. We're doing a webinar series on serving communities with different abilities. And so, back in January, the first one that we held was on best practices on how to work with a client that has different physical abilities. And that's on our YouTube channel. I encourage you all to go back. The one that's coming up next week is on neurodiversity, which I will be very honest with you, was not a term I was familiar with until the past year. And it's so vitally important. You know, how can you work with your clients? We're going to have a realtor on board with us. I think some of you know Nayana Ammerman-McLean. She's fantastic. She actually comes from the neurodiverse community, and she's going to talk about best practices and how she's used that as her superpower to work within those communities, and she's going to share those best practices. So we're going to tape it, so if you can't make it, don't worry about it, but I encourage you all to go look at that. We also last year started the DEI Leadership Award, which celebrates all of the contributions that anyone from an individual can apply to your local association. If y'all are doing something, you have some amazing programs out there, I encourage you to get recognition for what you're doing and be able to take some time on the stage and talk about what you're doing and the difference it's made in your communities. We also have our Pride in Practice event. This one really is free, I swear. It's not even. We're going to be in Baltimore this year at the American Visionary Art Museum, AVAM. If you have not been, this place is so cool. It is really neat. And we're going to do something really fun. We've got some great speakers. We're going to get, that registration is opening up, I don't know, I'm driving the comms team crazy. I have like 6 things starting in April, so bear with us on the emails and things we send out. But it does, I know. I think they hang me in effigy back there and throw darts at my glamour shot. So anyway, the Pride in Practice event is going to be on June 11th. It'll open up, you'll see it. Please come, it's a really fun day. And then instead of doing the normal happy hour, it's summertime, we're gonna do this crazy ice cream social hour. So I think it'll be really cool. I encourage you all to join us. You also get CE credit. Don't forget about that. We're going to run the bias override. I know y'all love your CE, and that's a great course to take as well. We have Kathleen and the Dream Team teaching that one, so that'll be a lot of fun. Okay, so this is the serious part of my stuff. You know, everything else I get to do is so much fun. This is just flat out important. The professional standards, we have a statewide cooperative. We've been running it for a year now. We've got a year under our belt. We have 13 of the 16 local associations participate in this. The reason that we went down this path is to develop some consistency and additional expertise. So it's hard to be an expert in something if you hear one case a year or one case every 10 years. So the local boards all got together. They've worked with us on this. The 3 that don't, just because I know that some of you are in here, and I know Jen Lee will yell at me if I don't say this, is GBBR, GCAR, and PENMAR are the ones who are not in here. They still run their in-house. They do everything for you there. So just make that note. Anybody else that you have a problem, I'm going to talk about what we do within this real quick. So these are ways that you can solve your differences. You can talk about it, and I cannot encourage you enough. It's amazing to me that people don't talk. You talk for a living. You know, talk to your broker. Have your broker call another broker if there's a problem. That is always where things should start. Don't just automatically file something because of a knee-jerk reaction. Try to work it through. So then, ombuds, mediation. You get into filing the ethics complaint and the arbitration. So the ombuds, what is that? It's basically the telephone game. All of your local associations maintained this. We did not take this on at the state level, but we do have some ombuds if you decide that you don't want to run this through your local. We do have people who will help. I'm staring at one of them and our mediators right now, but I won't say her name out loud because she'll get mad at me. So this is really about somebody intervening for you and just making some phone calls and seeing if they can help. It's free, and it's certainly worth an effort. I know that there have been many that have been resolved just through this, that there was just a communication problem. If you're interested in the Ombuds program, twice a year, we also do training on it that Lisa Cameron from OM Services provides with us. She loves doing her OmBuddies presentation. She's very passionate about this program, so take a look at that if you're interested in being helpful on that end at your local. The mediation is a third-party service. We use, at Maryland Realtors, we use OM Services, and what this is basically you're hiring somebody to sit down and try to negotiate the deal out for you there. It's a lot less money, it's a lot less time, it can sometimes mean just bringing people together, each party making perhaps even a concession to reach an agreement so that you're not ending up going through the ethics or not ethics, I'm sorry, going through arbitration. So if you have a broker-to-broker dispute, a lot of times things can be solved at this level. At Maryland Realtors, mediation is not mandatory. I know that it is at the local boards, but it is not at Maryland Realtors. You're doing this voluntarily because you feel like there's a solution out there without going through the full arbitration process. But that being said, you may still get there. So for an ethics complaint, you are all obligated to follow, and me too, the NAR Code of Ethics. If something has gone wrong, if you have seen something egregious, if you feel like something has not been right, then call us and file a complaint. It's the right thing to do, because a lot of people say, you know what, I just want it done. I just want this deal done, and I'm not worried about it. But you should be worried about it, because if somebody's doing something wrong, they're not just doing it to you, they're going to do it farther down the road. And some cases, they may not even know what they're doing is wrong. So I really feel like it's important that you think through it, and if it's necessary, that you file a complaint. Let's see. This is Sandy Frazier. She is our extraordinaire administration on this program, and we move quickly. So we follow all of the guidelines. We try to get through this as quickly as possible so that it doesn't keep going on for you and we can get through the process. So arbitration. Y'all know what arbitration is. It's when you get into the broker-to-broker dispute. Again, sometimes it's mandatory to go through mediation, but it isn't at Maryland. So what happens here is this is where and with the ethics as well, the process is you file a complaint, it goes to our grievance panel, they hear it, they go through it, they make sure that that it's appropriate to go forward for a hearing. If it's appropriate to go forward for a hearing, then it goes to our professional standards panel, of which we have some amazing people. If you all are interested, again, shameless plug, we are getting out there, our grievance committee, if you're interested in starting there, it is a prerequisite. You have to serve on that committee for 2 years before you can go to the professional standards. But the people who are on it are passionate about it, they're experienced, and they absolutely are here to make sure that these things don't have to go to court anymore. And in the end, I was talking with Lisa Cameron with OM Services, and I think we're going to put like a little stats page together, because she's now in her 30th year of this, and she was telling me that she was working on the math and that she's heard 60,000 cases over that 30 years. And what does that break down into to the number of people? Like, it was an amazing stat that I think shows that this works, because those could have all been court cases, and the expense and the time going into that when things were resolved within your peers, your peer group. So anyway, that is all of that. I also want to make sure that if you have any questions, Diana and I are here. We're happy to talk about any of these programs. If there's something that we're not doing that y'all want, oh my God, I shamelessly didn't plug the ABR. Okay.
You don't need to.
There is a wait list available. Okay, so the ABR program, we are holding that. It is free. It is closed now because, again, we did a 75 in person and 300 online. There is CE associated with this. We got the whole thing done. So if you do the 2-day program, which is May 13th and the 20th, if you pre-registered, you'll end up with 6 CE credits and a lot of information that you need. It's a really great program that is really needed right now. We are going to do it again in the fall. We just haven't set the dates yet with everything that's going on in those months, but we will. There is a wait list online. You can still go put your name in it, and we'll probably have 30 people drop out. So please, if you're interested, take a minute and go online and put your number in there, because those are the people we'll reach out to. And I think that's it for my department. Okay. So So the next piece of this is that I was asked to introduce Brian Lippy from the Realtor Relief Foundation. If he is, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to. Thank you all.
Hi, I'm Brian Lipsky. I'm the past president for Carroll County Realtors, but I'm here today on behalf of NAR and our Realtors Relief Foundation. First, I want to apologize that I'm going to ask for forgiveness because I didn't ask for permission. Kathleen, I'm going to talk some numbers, and yes, I am going to make a prediction. So how many of you have heard of the Realtors Relief Foundation? Oh, a good number. That's fantastic. So what we do, for those of you who haven't heard of us, it was created after the September 11th terrorist attacks. And it was realtors helping realtors who needed disaster relief. So just some numbers. In 2021, we funded 9 disasters for $1.6 million. But it's grown so much last year, that went up to 25 disasters for a tune of $8.8 million. So prepare to feel proud. You know, this is what we do. And the prediction that I'm going to make is that last year, only 33 members of Maryland Realtors donated to Realtors Relief Foundation. So looking at this group today, my prediction is that we're going to match that number right here today. Can we go to the next slide? Oh, I guess I have that, don't I? All righty, so how can you, and we raised $4,125. Only 1 out of 16 local boards actually supported the foundation last year. I can tell you already for this year, first I want to thank Maryland Realtors for their continued support, but also Anne Arundel County, Midshore, and I just recently found out that Prince George's County have also made donations this year. So I'm on a mission to try to get all of our local associations to give. So how can you give? There's a QR code that can be scanned, or you can text Team RRF to 71777. I've got a table out in the lobby. I have that information out there. Anybody who donates here today, you'll get one of these pins. Kathleen has one. She was at the commercial symposium and donated there. If you donate $100 or more, I'll give you one of these T-shirts. So thank you very much for your time.
Okay, we are going to break for lunch, and right after lunch, we're going to have Lisa May come up here and talk about our advocacy efforts, because Monday is sunny day. So enjoy lunch.
We're going to get started again with our illustrious Director of Advocacy and Public Policy to give you an update on the so far extremely successful General Assembly session and other things. Lisa May.
All right, hi everyone. I'm so happy to be going after lunch instead of before. This is fantastic. So, as we said, illustrious Advocacy and Public Policy Department. Of course, myself, we have Krista McGee. I always used to forget to introduce Krista because she's just an extension of myself. That's how I think of her at this point. And Jackie Moak, I know you guys clapped for her once, but we can do it again. If you guys attended Lobby Day and had a good time, it is entirely because of Krista and Jackie. So we really thank them for their efforts there. As was mentioned, we are in the middle, well, maybe not the middle, of the General Assembly session. We had more bills than we did last year. We tracked more bills than we did last year. We had a sold-out Lobby Day, and Dan mentioned that, you know, we have 5 days left in the General Assembly session, unless they can't come to an agreement on a budget, in which case we have 15, which is almost too painful to think about, but we'll get across the finish line. Either way, we'll get across. Of our realtor priorities, I'll start with the bad news first. We put in a measure to address condo and HOA resale disclosures, timelines, fees, because it is something that we hear about a whole lot. That bill did not move forward. It was a difficult issue. We knew it was going to be a difficult issue, difficult committees, but thought it was worth a shot because it is one of the top complaints that we get to our legal hotline. We hear about it a whole lot. We're not going to stop working on it. But now that that's out of the way, let's talk about the good news. Buyer broker compensation passed unanimously, continuing education passed unanimously, anonymous advertising complaints passed unanimously, and branch office oversight passed unanimously with time to spare. So hopefully that brings us back up into the happy part. Governor's housing plan is another big issue that we have been working on. These bills have all made it out of the House and are currently in the Senate. There's been a lot of negotiation, a lot of amendments. In fact, we were in Annapolis 3 hours ago talking about the governor's rental plan, trying to get favorable amendments to get the things that we want out of those bills. We anticipate right now that all three are in pretty good shape. All of the amendments that have been done to the bills, including amendments that we have sought, are in there to try to win the number of votes that they need to get these across the finish line. And in fact, for those of you who live in districts of the Senate EEE Committee, on Monday, we launched a limited call for action out to members to encourage members of EEE to vote for the Housing Expansion and Affordability Act, which is the supply bill, the one that actually starts building houses that we need here in Maryland. So on Monday, that went out Monday, like between 4:30, 5:30, if you want to check your emails. EEE Committee, and this is going to, because they changed the name of it, Education, Energy, and the Environment. Used to be Education, never mind. Yeah, right, exactly. And will be forever. Yes, exactly. But we will be sending another reminder for those who have not responded to that calls for action, just because this is the most serious kind of housing proposal that we've had in many, many years. Other bills of interest. Hey, we had a sales tax on services again this year, guys. Second time in 4 years. Because as many of you know, our state budget is a little challenging. Our state economy is not growing the way that we want it to. The House was trying to find some revenues. The Senate said, maybe we're not going to do that. But sales tax on services, we had that hearing in Ways and Means. We issued a call for action to members who lived in the districts of those Ways and Means members. We sent over 700 emails to their inboxes in about 3 days, and that bill stayed in Ways and Means without a vote. It's still there. It's not going anywhere. Good job. Excellent work. We thank you for that. Just cause termination of leases. Just cause non-renewal, let's call it. Okay. This bill would require a landlord, property manager, to have to give a valid reason why they are not renewing a tenant's lease or why they are not keeping them in a holdover tenancy. That's a tough bill. You know, there have been a lot of amendments to it in the House. It's currently in the Senate JPR. Not enough amendments for us to like the bill, because we, you know, at our core believe that a contract is a contract and you cannot force someone to enter into a contract against their will, particularly when they've fulfilled the terms of the original contract. But that bill has been a difficult one this year because we've had some changes in leadership. We've had some folks that had kept that bottled up in committee that are no longer in the General Assembly. So that's one that we're actively fighting, and was one of the bills that was discussed this morning in the final days of session. Transfer tax increase. We had one of those bills too. It was real in Annapolis this year. This bill would have increased the transfer tax, made it a progressive transfer tax, but any property over $500,000 would have seen a tax increase. And so that hits our jurisdictions very differently depending on where you are in the state. But we went to bat on that. The builders went to bat on that. That one stayed in committee as well without a vote. And then finally, Reserve studies is an issue that we hear from you a lot. 2 years ago, there was a bill that required condominiums and HOAs to conduct reserve studies if they had not already been, and to put in place a plan to fund those. Based upon how that bill was interpreted, a lot of condos have been told, either by those who are conducting the reserve studies or by their attorneys, that they need to fully fund their reserves in cash in 3 years. And that has created a real hardship for some of our older, high-rise condominiums who maybe had not been doing their due diligence and doing all the reserve studies and funding that they needed to. This bill would give those developments, one, additional time to get a funding plan in place, and you would not have to have full cash funding of all of your reserve needs. You would just need to have a plan to meet them by the time the useful life of your facilities or your buildings comes up. So we are pushing, that one has passed the House. It is also in Senate JPR. We are pushing Senate JPR to get that on a vote list, get it out to the floor so that that can be put in place. We focused a whole lot just now on the General Assembly session because that's where we are. But we do a whole lot more. Krista is our MREC whisperer. She works really closely with them. We do consumer education through MarylandHomeownership.com, our consumer site. We work with our Housing Opportunity Committee to do monthly homebuyer education courses online that are completely free, partnering with Freddie Mac and with the Maryland Mortgage Program, and Maryland DHCD has been a fantastic partnership with them. We support our local associations. When local issues come up and you need assistance, your local associations need assistance, you can go to NAR for grant funding, but Maryland Realtors, you can come to us and we can help make up the difference in any funding that you need or to pay your, what they call skin in the game. We are here for you guys. We've started meeting with your local legislative chairs and your local GADs once a month to talk about how we can better coordinate all of the issues that are coming up in your communities, to share information, to make sure that the things that we're pushing at the state level are reflective of what you're seeing on the ground. And speaking of state legislation, we start on 2025 in 2 weeks. That's when we start preparing our bills for next year. So we do want to hear from you. If there are issues that you're seeing in your communities that are not being addressed, please let us know. We are here to help you and to try to find solutions to those items. And that's what I got.
All right, good afternoon, everyone. It is a little difficult to see the screen from here, but I'll do the best that I can. First of all, I just want to say this is one of my favorite events to attend every year. It's really good to just come out and connect with the members and to see familiar faces again. So please give yourselves a hand for coming out on a day like today. It was rainy. But we want to have some energy in here. Everybody's eating lunch now. Everybody's kind of slumping down in their seats like this. So I'm going to give most people an opportunity to at least stand up and stretch a little bit by starting out with this question. How many people in the room are President's Circle investors in RPAC? If you can, please stand and remain standing. President's Circle. Okay. That means that there's one that just left. Okay, great. That means that there's opportunities for others to move up. How many people in the room are major investors, meaning that you have invested $1,000 or more? Please stand and remain standing. Give yourselves a hand. Thank you so much. Remain standing. How many people in the room have given a minimum of $35 or more? Please stand and remain standing. Okay, so that means that the people who are sitting, there's an opportunity for you to stand, because that means that how many people have not pledged yet and you plan to pledge before the end of the year? You can stand and give yourselves a hand as well. And I can understand. Okay, thank you for being honest. Thank you. All right. right. So let's just talk about like where your money goes when you make that investment. Your money goes to federal policy in addition to state policy. So with respect to the federal advocacy, your money goes to housing affordability and availability, to fair housing programs, and also to research. NAR does a lot of research to, make sure that we're doing the right things for our members. And if you can just take your phone out, you can actually take a picture of the QR code. And I'll have a spoiler alert that there are more QR codes to come. So have your phone ready and available. But it's some really neat research products that NAR does on our behalf to make sure that we're moving in the right direction. So I believe that there's a clicker here, and let's see if I know what I'm doing this time. All right. So here are some things where your money went to fight federal advocacy. We fought regulation that would drive housing providers from the market. We amplified the need for housing accessibility and affordability, supported incentives to increase housing supply, and shaped congressional and administration action. If you take a picture of the QR code, you can actually see what actions that NAR took to actually work on our behalf in those areas. And if I'm going too fast and you need me to go back, just let me know and I'll push the reverse button. With respect to the federal advocacy resources, there are certain reports that are available to us that some of you may not have even known about. We'll start with the Washington Report, the Congressional District and State Report. Then we have the Federal Issues Tracker, the Active Advocacy Issues A to Z, and last but not least, the 50-plus years of advocacy accomplishments. And that's a really good report. So I don't know if you want to take a snapshot of that and look at it at some point later, but there's some really good information and resources for us in this space. I see a few people still clicking, so I'll give you a couple of seconds to take those pictures. And Chuck, will this presentation be available to everyone afterwards? The entire presentation, not just this. Okay, thank you. Good answer, good answer. Okay, so let's move over to the state and local advocacy efforts. So there are some things that you may have known and some things that you may have not known. Hopefully you'll have at least one takeaway. With respect to the Realtor Party and RPAC, we use your investments for community outreach, RPAC, broker involvement, the Federal Political Coordinator Program. Those are called FPCs. Are there any FPCs in the room? Yeah, there's one back there. Okay. And then we also have the Realtor Party Success Stories. Again, another QR code for you to check and see how we make that happen on your behalf. All right, we have some more Realtor Party resources here. How many people have heard of the Vote, Act, and Invest? No? Vote, act, and invest. It means we want you to go to the polls and vote for your candidate that is realtor friendly, act when there's a call to action, and invest in RPAC. There are also grants and funding that help us, that our money goes towards when you make that investment. There are also some advocacy resource guides, and there's a Realtor Party mobile alert. How many people have received one of those Realtor Party mobile alerts? So when you get those, it's only what, 2 clicks? Is it 2 clicks or 1 click? It's no more than 2 clicks to make a point. Here's the deal. If we don't stand up for what we need in our industry, then who else is going to do it? So whenever you get that call to action, just make sure you take those 2 clicks. All right, so we have a legislative meeting coming up in Washington, D.C. in our backyard, literally in May. If you are not already registered for it, we highly encourage you to do so. And there's another QR code for you to quickly be able to be directed to the webpage to do that. So, in closing, I just want to thank you for your time and attention. And we will move on to the next person, which is our president, Chris Hill.
Okay, so Chuck, you gave me permission earlier. He said it was he wasn't going to throw NAR under the bus. So that's my job today. So, and we're on video, which is really convenient. I think you guys I have heard overwhelmingly from our membership that the one thing that they appreciate from me is my honesty about this issue. And I'm not going to stop now. I am still angry. I'm not happy with how this happened. I want to share with you guys something. By the way, I wrote a whole thing for the first one of these, and I didn't say it, right? Because it wasn't appropriate. See the lights flickering. Oh boy. They are listening. But I want to share with you a couple things before we get into the Q&A, because I think it's important for you to understand where I stand. A couple weeks ago, or a week or two ago, we were on a call with with President Sears and the exec committee and state presidents and communications directors. And I want to share with you the most enlightening question raised in that meeting was brought forth by Dan Petrell here. And he asked, why are you not giving, I'm going to paraphrase, I'm sorry. Why are we so reactive as opposed to being proactive? And that's what I'm hearing all of you say. We need to be proactive and not reactive. And I'll say it again and again and again. I want to read to you this morning. I was sitting over there doing notes and I wrote, I want to read to you the headline of 6 or 7 emails I received today, okay? This is just the titles of the emails. Number 1, what great realtors should do next. Number 2, now through July, the defining time. Next, new commission suits draw FTC's attention. Now, this is the one that I thought was interesting. April is Fair Housing Month. How to handle a sensitive topic with grace. The last one I thought, well, there's many more, and I wrote a bunch of them down, and I could go on, but the last one I thought was really interesting, and it says, time to quit selling real estate. We are all victims right now, and I will not adopt a victim mentality however we are. We have been faced with a burden that was an edict, if you will, that was given to us. I want you guys to know that I am, and I know I sound like I'm kissing butt up here, okay? Let's be real. But this staff has really turned it on right now. And I will tell you that the communications committee moved up their meeting. The statewide forums committee has moved up their meetings. Everybody is being proactive now to try and deal with this situation. And the communications committee, I believe, is going to bring forward, I'm kind of stepping out of line here and I'm not sure where the vote will go, but whatever. We are proposing a campaign for Maryland Realtors. If NAR isn't going to do it, then we are.
Let's do it.
And, everybody says you're put in a position for a reason at a given time, right? And I'm going to say I've always been sincere and honest with you guys. I'm going to ask you to do something for us, for our state industry, and for the betterment of what we do. You're here to better our industry. I'm going to ask you to carry the banner of Maryland Realtors. When we share stuff, we need you to share it. We need it more than ever. We need you to share our social media posts. We need you to go on. When we have a call to action, we need you to jump on it. We are a team here in Maryland. And if we need to stick together, right? And this is our opportunity to do that. I said at my installation that we are Maryland Realtors and we are strong. I'm telling you right now, after all this is done, we're going to be even stronger, and I promise you that. So, the opportunity to ask questions is yours, and I think we have a microphone to take around. And Kathleen, why don't you just come up here, because we all know how this works, right? But I would love to, anyone who has any questions, there's Hugh in the back, I think. Yes. It's being recorded, so we want it on the...
Thanks.
Thanks, Chuck.
I'm Hugh Gordon. I'm the CEO of FCAR. You talk about being proactive instead of reactive. I'm an old mortgage guy. I'm not as old of a mortgage guy as my friend Al Ingram over here, but I am an old... So, this is really more of a comment. Let's, instead of waiting for NAR and VA, like two big dogs barking at the back fence at each other, why don't we go out and find VA practitioner, or veterans, people that are actually veterans, and try to get them to kind of carry the torch for us. Because every time we've ever seen a change in VA, it's been because people that are trying to buy homes through the VA program have been unable to do X, Y, or Z, and they've gone to their congressmen, or they've gone to their senators. We've got Fort Detrick, we've got all kinds of venues that we could go to find the people that we need to speak on our behalf to address this issue, instead of trying to do it directly with VA. You'll never get anywhere with VA.
Right. Yeah. No, I think that, Hugh, that's a great idea, and I also want to share, every time we get these great ideas, they don't get overlooked. One of these people up here is taking notes on it, and we will. I promise you, we have talked about 1 million creative ideas, some of which we vetted through, and some of which we didn't, and but we'll continue to do that. And I think that's a really good one. Again, being proactive versus reactive. So I appreciate that, Hugh.
Hi, Anita Davis, Greater Baltimore Board of Realtors. I sit on federal financing and housing policy at NAR, and in November, the speaker was someone from VA. And I did specifically ask the question, with all these lawsuits that are coming down the pike, how is VA addressing the buyer representation issue and the fact that VA, the veterans, are not permitted to pay anything toward a commission? And his simple response to me was, it's not on our agenda. So I am going to really support Hugh in this one. Where we're going to need it is having the veteran themselves, who will be most likely unrepresented buyers, and how can they want their veterans to go unrepresented? Like, what kind of service are they giving to their veterans? So let's advocate to them, because their voice is the one that needs to be heard, not ours. Our voice is the one saying, pay me, pay me, pay me. Their voice is the one that's saying, I need their support, I need their help, I need them, I've got to be part of this transaction.
Well, go ahead.
And as an adjunct to that, Anita, I just saw the statistics. Kathleen, you had those. You want to about the number of VA buyers that are people of color, that are veterans of color, and so talk about fair housing issues. You want to, I don't remember the numbers, but speak into the mic so it gets on the recording.
I'm loud. Oh, yeah, okay. No, just briefly, that's a very good point, and one that I was actually not aware of until a few weeks ago and started having these conversations. NAR brought it to our attention. It's in one of their home buyers reports. Yeah. But African Americans, black people in the U.S. population, I think it's 12 to 13% are black. People using VA financing to purchase homes, black people are kind of overrepresented. It's 23% of VA buyers are black people. So this policy is shocker, going to disproportionately affect black people, as so many policies do. So that's, disparate impact is a fair, potentially a way to show a fair housing violation, and just the reality of it, the practicality of it, this is going to impact different groups of people differently. So that's something that I don't think any of our elected officials, I don't think anybody at VA wants to, even the plaintiffs, I would hope, would not want to implement a policy that would disproportionately affect black home buyers or potential home buyers, but here we are. So that's important to remember as well.
Yeah. And if we drill down, stay here, because because I'm talking about you guys, right, and disparate impact, and what do you do? Remember I said you don't have to work for free. Remember, I asked Katie Johnson directly, one-on-one, Katie, do we have to work for free? If we have a buyer, and whether it's a VA buyer or not, or a first-time buyer who says they can't afford the commission, but whatever it is, but we put this house in front of them, and I explained to them, if you want to see this house, we cannot get compensated. If it's a regular buyer, we could say, okay, we could put that addendum in the offer and whatever, but I don't work for free. So if it's a VA buyer, that's not even going to be an option, right? So when that VA buyer says, this is the house of our dreams, and I can't pay you by law, and the seller won't, and the listing broker won't, I'm telling you today, you do not have to represent that buyer in that transaction legally or ethically. Are you gonna? Right? So this is what they've done to us now. This is where we are, because I know you guys. You're not gonna put that veteran out on their own. You're not. So you're gonna work for, I know you. You're gonna do it anyway. And that's wrong. And so to the extent, Hugh, we're gonna take up that banner, and the VA's a big ship, but something's gotta give. It's wrong. So, but thank you, because you guys have big hearts. You're gonna do the right thing. And if that means working for free, I know you're gonna do it. But it's wrong. You don't have to. Let me put it this way. You don't have to.
Yeah, well.
Chris?
Are you done, Chuck?
I don't
want to cut you off.
Am I ever done?
I don't want to cut you off.
Am I ever done?
Okay, so I have two questions, both kind of pertaining prior to whatever date it is that we're talking about in July or August or whenever that is. So if I have a listing agreement and I've already signed that listing agreement prior to, what happens when the changeover comes? What do we renegotiate? Is it grandfathered in? What are we going to do? Now, second question is, I'm working with a buyer, and I have a buyer's agent, and I've agreed to say X amount of whatevers, and they've agreed to that, and then all of a sudden now it's after that date, and the seller is offering possibly more. Am I allowed to renegotiate my buyer agency agreement? And is that even ethical? Sorry, don't mean to stump you, but I'm just
we don't know.
Curious as to where I go. Like, do I just go on vacation this summer?
Yeah, we don't know. Chris, these are questions we are asking ourselves. Bright has going to have a role in this as well. We don't know. The answer is we don't know. And I promise to be honest with you. And if the answer is we don't know, we don't know. And we're not going to pretend we do. But we will have those answers for you well in advance of the trigger date. I promise we will. And by the way, we need two things. Because remember, I don't know if you were here a couple years ago when I did my Words Matter thing. I hate skin in the game, hate it, which we had another word for it, another term for it. And grandfathered in, I don't use that either, because that was adopted in the South when the tests, right, to vote. The black voters were passing those tests at a greater rate than white voters, and in mostly southern states, they adopted this law called the grandfather rule, where if your grandfather voted, you were allowed to vote. But if your grandfather did not vote, you were not allowed to vote.
Who does that impact?
So when we talk about grandfather somebody in, it's from the old South, a way to disenfranchise black voters. So I don't use that phrase, grandfathered in, and I wish we would eliminate it from our lexicon.
No more.
Who are you? I'm sorry. Are you allowed to be in here? I'm sorry.
Yeah. I don't actually need a mic.
Gave him a
Never
mic.
have.
No, you do need, Al, to be recorded. No, you do need it so you're on the recording. Oh, I need you. No, I need the evidence.
All right, now you can hear me. Honest to God, officer, I didn't mean to do that. No. Let me just clarify one thing. Even though Hugh is a little younger than I am, he looks like hell. We're always talking about advocacy. We're talking about this particular situation. We're talking about getting a relationship with the VA. Seems to me we've got a perfect candidate who resides in the governor's mansion.
Yeah.
He's brilliant, he's a Rhodes Scholar, he's a veteran, he's a man of color, and he speaks, and said when he speaks, people listen. I mean, in just a tragic 8 days,
yeah,
he showed me what leadership's all about. And I've got to believe if he asks for a meeting with some of us there with him to meet with the VA and go over this, or meet with whoever we have to go over, they would listen to someone like Wes Moore.
That's a great idea. Thank you. If only Hugh had a little more experience, he would have come up with that. Hi, Linda.
Hi, Kathleen. So for those of you who don't know me, hi, Chuck. I wasn't ignoring you, Chuck. So for those of you who don't know me, I think that might be 3 people in the room, Linda Harned, associate broker with Douglas Realty. So Kathleen, this is a practical question. A lot of times we get a buyer who says, I don't want to be represented. And so we have them fill out the paperwork. They're unrepresented. We show them a house, and most of you know I sit on the statewide forms committee, so one of the forms we created years ago was a form giving the buyer the opportunity to change their mind after they've seen the property, and we can now submit to the listing agent that we are now representing the buyer. However, we will not disclose any confidential information we learned during the period we did not represent the buyer. How is that going to play into the fact that we're now saying, Maryland Realtors say that it's a law that we must represent the buyer?
Well, we're not saying you must represent the buyer. Maryland law does not say that. I'm sorry. Yeah, Maryland law does not say that you have to represent the buyer. This settlement agreement is between the parties to the litigation. It doesn't supersede state law. So we still have sub-agency. If a buyer doesn't want to sign a buyer agency agreement, you can take them and show them a property. If it's your company's listing, you're the seller's agent. If a different company listing, you're the sub-agent. The settlement agreement does say, as realtors, as you know, members of NAR, Maryland Realtors, and your local boards, it does say that we're supposed to get a written buyer agency agreement before showing a home. And I'm just a practical perspective, I think that is by far the strongest policy. And again, I don't want to sound like it's all about the money, but this is how you earn a living, right? You're entitled to earn a living, and I think you have to have those conversations with your buyer up front. If I show a property and I don't represent the buyer, I show the buyer the property as a sub-agent, he falls in love, am I getting paid? Is the buyer gonna have to pay me? Is the seller gonna pay me? Maybe not. I mean, I don't wanna go show properties and not know where the heck the money's coming. Am I getting paid or not getting paid? I don't represent that client. I don't have a fiduciary, it's not even a client, it's a customer. I don't have a fiduciary duty to that person. My strong recommendation, I think our strong recommendation would be really to get the buyer agency agreement in place. Then you're going to have the conversation. I don't want this to create a situation where you're bringing buyers out to show them a home, they fall in love with it, and then you're not going to get compensated. And that's the home they want to pursue. This is the home of my dreams. This is the one I want.
So I agree with you. And maybe this is a discussion for our Monday statewide forms committee, that we remove that form, because as long as it exists, it gives the agents an opportunity to utilize it. I've never not represented a buyer, but I know many agents in our business do utilize that form, and they may be misinformed that now with the changes coming forth, as you said, they may very strongly not get paid. So I just wanted to throw that out there as a consideration that maybe the form now is not effective moving forward.
Yeah, I think that would be something probably for the statewide forms committee to discuss. But I think the bottom line is that, this doesn't change. Sub-agency is permissible in Maryland. Maryland law allows that. You just have to use that understanding whom form. So I don't know. That's for the committee to discuss.
I'll send an email to you guys.
I have no doubt, Linda, no doubt. I'll be getting a text with a smiley face. I already know. Thanks, Linda.
Hi, Anita Castell. Following up on what Linda said, and this again will probably be a forms committee thing, which we can deal with Monday. Talking about not getting paid, I mean, the conversation obviously needs to be had with the buyer. When I was selling, I used to have that in my buyer consultation meeting.
Right.
I won't show you this house if I tell you that you're going to have to make up this amount and you don't want to do that. But there's going to have to be some sort of wording that addresses that. And with that said, I feel like we need to mirror what we talked about initialing the listing agreement compensation on the buyer agency.
That's in there as well, yeah.
It is.
I'm just going to kind of chime in or add to that a little bit. I think one thing that we have to be cautious about, there were a lot of misstatements in the media, and I heard people on the news saying that realtors would screen listings by whether they were going to get compensated or not, and realtors were boycotting properties where there was no compensation. So again, personally, I've never heard of that ever happening. I hope that that's not happening. I think what Chuck alluded to is what I've heard far more often. You're going to show a property anyway, because that's your client, you have a relationship with them. Even if you think you're not going to get paid, you're probably still going to pay it. But I think we have to be careful with that. We don't want the perception to be that it's all about the money and I'm not going to show you properties if I don't get paid. But I think you can do that in a professional way, in a respectful way. I mean, buyers have a certain amount of money available. Buyers are going to have a certain credit score. They're going to have a certain income. They're going to get approved for a certain level. Those are all conversations that you need to have. And compensation, it should be part of that.
It's no different than inspection, appraisal. You need money.
Right. Right, exactly.
Let me just say, going back to something that I said earlier, which is these basically three sources of compensation, right, Anita? So the buyer, the listing broker, and potentially the seller, right? And so these buyer consultations are going to be complicated. There's no question about that now, because if the buyer says, I can't afford to pay you, then you're going to have to go through these options. Well, we check the website or whatever format or forum that the listing broker, listing agent is acknowledging or making us aware of what are probably going to be known as seller concessions, or also the buyer themselves, and then how to incorporate all of that into your conversation. The option ultimately is going to seem to me, and we spent a lot of time this, and the Forums Committee is going to have fun with this, I know, some way to filter those results, right? So if the buyer says, okay, here's a 5-mile radius of this point, and here's my price range, right? And you pull up 10 listings that meet those criteria. Now you're going to have to filter those with the buyer. So here's the conversation Forums Committee is going to have. Who does that filtering, right? So if the buyer says, don't show me a house where there's no compensation coming from anywhere else because I can't afford to pay you, is that our job or theirs, right? Well, I'm just saying there are options that you're going to have to discuss as to how to put that in the buyer representation agreement, how to filter those results by compensation model of those three options. Do you see? Everybody understand what I'm saying? That is our job. Our job is moving forward to make sure that you have tools that you can work with a buyer to filter results. I personally think it's the buyer's job, but ultimately they're going to be responsible for deciding what houses they want to see, and if it's based on the compensation coming from the other two sources, then we're going to have to figure out a way to incorporate that into the buyer representation agreement so that there's no question, yeah, this house seemed like it met your needs, but I was not able to secure compensation from the broker or listing broker or the seller. Therefore, you have decided, Mr. and Mrs. Buyer, that we're not pursuing that house. I'm not making that decision for you because that's the steering that we need to avoid, but a process has to be in place for the buyers to do that and communicate that decision to us and memorialize in writing when and if that ends up blowing up in our face. Does that make sense to everybody? That's our job. It's easy to say, right? But this job of the committee and Taylor and Kathleen to put that in writing and then to train everybody. Think about this. Think about how this is going to change that buyer, meeting, right? This is going to be a lot to ask of you, but it's hypercritical that we get this down and we get it right.
I'm just going to add again, just another plug for ABR. We're doing it. A lot of, I know some brokerages are offering it within the brokerage. There are coaches, Brian Buffini, Tom Ferry, whatever your company does, whatever you personally do, take advantage of all of that. Just really practice. There's going to be some issues that we didn't have to discuss or we'll have to discuss in a different way. We're all professionals. This is how you make your livelihood. Buyers are going to be hearing different things on the radio, on the news. They may not have a good understanding. Our communication skills are going to be even more important. And again, stand tall. What value you bring to the transaction, know that and sell it, right? Sell yourself.
Hi. So, it seems like you guys are talking to NAR constantly.
Yeah.
And, with the VA thing, it will probably work itself out since they're so fast. We're talking 2-3 years. But with first-time home buyers and the lower income, what is their response, when you're asking these questions and these people they're not going to have that cash. And, we don't work for free. We want to. We do sometimes, but, what is their response to that?
Kelly, you want? No. I will make Kelly come up here. Kelly, so the NAR had a town hall, I guess, for lack of a better term, while this meeting was occurring. And Kelly was, and Dan, you mentioned Kelly not being here when she was already back. And they talked about this, and you're not going to like this. NAR does not want us to focus on them. And I don't know why. I'm going to have to dig deeper into that. I'll go and listen. This wasn't recorded, was it? And neither is the board of directors meeting that's happening now, by the way, which we were not. 15-minute. The board of directors meeting starts in 15 minutes and you're invited. So this is what we're dealing with. Chris isn't the only one throwing NAR under the bus right now. But the point is that, yes, this will have a significant impact on buyers who have the least ability to pay. There's no question about that. NAR just at this point, and why, I'm not really sure, but they don't want us to use that. They don't want us to lead with that. And so we're going to lead with other things. And we figure out a way to weave that in to the conversation. So that's all I know at this point, but we'll hone that message as we move on.
I'm going to take the fifth. No comment from me.
I'm going to back up just a little bit to what you were talking about when it came to the options that buyers are going to have.
Yeah.
And then talking about the value proposition goes over to the seller as well. So if the seller understands that the buyer is going to have options whether or not to see their home or not, that the buyer has options as to whether to see their home or not, that's a value proposition to pitch to the sellers to let them know how important it is if they want those eyes on their property. So I just wanted to switch it from buyer to seller and how we can, because that was a comment that was made earlier.
Hey, Anita, I'm going to share one story that a member shared. I looked around. She's not here. I won't say her name. But a member shared a story with me that she had met. It was a first-time home buyer. I think she had represented their parents when they purchased the house. So, a friendly relationship. First-time home buyer who did not have money to pay any extra. She was really struggling to, come up with the closing costs alone without going out of pocket to pay a commission. And the agent met with her, and I think there were 4 properties that satisfied her, whatever the criteria was. And she said, some listing brokers have already been offering 0, right? That's already happening. So one of these properties that the woman wanted to look at was a situation where the listing broker was offering 0. And she said she sat with her and went through the math and explained, and the woman said, I don't have any extra money. And she said, well, back to the fiduciary duty or whatever, she said, well, I'll show you this property, but I just want you to know I won't receive any compensation if you move forward on this property. And she said, well, then I don't want to see that property. We got 3 other ones, let's go look at the other 3.
Yeah.
So,
It is a
is that
value.
in the seller's best interest to offer 0 and have buyers not looking at it?
And just on the seller side, I had someone who purchased their new home before selling their current. And when we got the offer and we went over the numbers after the listing, when she had signed agreement for compensation, she said to me, she goes, now why am I having money go toward the buyer's side of the transaction? And I said, well, Mary, I said, when we wrote the 4 offers for you over the course of the time that you were shopping for your home, I said, had we found the house that you purchased and there had been no compensation being offered, our agreement said that I was going to get paid X amount of dollars. I said, I would have told you ahead of time that seller's not offering compensation. Would you have wanted to see that house? And she was ex-military, and she went, no. And I said, so think about that, is we've had multiple offers on your property, and had you not offered the compensation, would we have had that, which is now selling multiple offers over your list price? Would we have had as many eyes on your property? No. I said, so do you see why we offered that as part of our marketing plan to market your home? And she went, I get it.
Right.
So it's just that value
That's the
proposition
conversation.
and how we
Yeah.
deliver it to them. But the seller's going to have to understand the value to them as well as the buyer understands the value to them.
Yeah, and I can foresee a situation where sellers, compare their nets and say, no, I want the most net possible, so no, I'm not offering concessions to the buyer. And then say, okay, here's the pros and the cons, because we need, you to have informed consent about this. And so here are the positives, here are the negatives. Yes, you net more money, but there may be fewer eyes on the property. I can foresee a situation where a seller says, well, let's just put it out there for a couple months and see, because this is still a seller's market, right? And then we'll revisit that if I don't get enough showings or whatever, then we'll look at it again. I can foresee that happening. Can you? I'm seeing a lot of heads nod. So I think we need to be prepared for that, because in my, just knowing, putting myself in the shoes of a seller, I want the most net I can get if given the market. And now, eventually, I hope I live long enough to see another buyer's market. I really do. And a lot of this takes care of itself at that point, right? I don't see that on the horizon, given what we know about housing supply right now. But in a normal, buyer-seller market kind of routine, a lot of these would take care of themselves. But as long as we have multiple offers, sometimes bidding wars over list price, sellers are not going to have that kind of incentive to make buyer concessions until they have to. And so this is you're right, Anita, on the seller side, these conversations can be every bit as tricky as the ones we've outlined on the buyer side, no question.
Yes, Bob, I'm standing up.
Good one, Martha.
What did you say?
I didn't see you.
It's been a standing joke with Bob and I.
Of course. Some people think Bob is a standing joke.
I know, he does. Okay, I have one question. Is it business as usual with listings until, let's pick July 15th?
Yes.
So I can list a house, I can put the commission, I can do whatever is normal, right?
Yes.
Let's look at the positive side. Go out and get listings now. Tell your sellers this is business as usual, so let's get on the bandwagon now and get your house sold so that we don't have to worry about all this stuff.
Good marketing tip. Yeah, exactly.
Definitely.
Hold on. Let's do one at a time.
Okay.
I am a very literal person, so I have a question about verbiage in the actual settlement agreement. Naturally, I thought that the tip sheet put out by NAR was ambiguous and probably lacked the specifics that we really need to talk about. Paragraph 59 on page 30 is where it begins, and it says that the obligations set forth of the settlement agreement will terminate 7 years after the class notice date.
Yes.
How are you interpreting this?
Well, we don't have the class notice yet. That's the thing that triggers the 120 days. So when plaintiffs have to request that, and they have not yet. So that's why that mid-July date might slip. But that will be an established date. We will know that date, and we'll mark our calendars for 7 years after that, and all this goes away.
So we're understanding this correctly.
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Absolutely.
Which is interesting as well. Yeah.
Do you need to say something else? No. I just wanted to make sure I was interpreting that correctly. As I take it back, I have a meeting this evening with some local broker owners, taking it back to my own firm. I wasn't sure that I was reading it correctly. It was almost like, really?
That's what it says, yeah.
You are? 100%?
Did you have a question? Did you have a question?
Paula?
Do you want to ask? You don't have to.
It's not really a question, it's just, what's your name? Martha mentioned that we should get out and list houses now before July, but sellers are offering zero to brokers now. So, I'm just saying.
They always could.
They always could, that's true.
Then they could, yeah.
Recent.
Well, recent history they can, yeah.
And following up on that,
Okay.
it's a good time to market to your buyers. If you want your
Yeah.
compensation paid more often than not, do it now.
Yeah. Okay. I would just want to reiterate about negotiable. What does negotiable mean? As I said earlier, but I'm going to repeat it. You can charge what you charge. And I think this whole negotiability thing between competitors is fine. But when your firm establishes what you charge, if you go into a lawyer's office and they say, my rate is $600 an hour, you can say, will you take $450? And the lawyer could say, no, my rate is $600 an hour. Is that negotiable? Yes. Do they have to lower their prices just because you ask them to? No.
They have to be consistent with everyone.
And no,
That's absolutely true. There's
you
no.
don't even have to be, no, you do not have to be consistent. You can negotiate, you can lower your, Kathleen's, well, you saw her eyes roll. You got to be really careful about that because you're into fair housing territory. I understand that. So be real careful about that.
I don't know if the camera
There
caught
was
the
a
side eye.
yeah, the camera caught the side eye. I did, only in peripheral, so I knew it. So just be careful about it. The point is, when they say, and the listing agreements, a buyer agency, they're all going to say commissions are negotiable. Are they?
Well, no makes it an unsuccessful negotiation.
Right, exactly.
I had a thought when we were talking about talking to sellers. We currently have in the Maryland Realtor exclusive right to list agreement a black box warning around the part where we ask sellers whether we can put their house in the multiple listing service and on the internet. And that black box warning says, if you choose not to do these things, this may reduce the visibility of your house, it may reduce the price you get offered, etc. Think maybe we need one of those for buyer agent compensation in the listing agreement?
That's another one. That's a good thought and a good suggestion. I mean, I think again, all of this, we do have to be careful. We don't want it to be perceived as, you know, we're putting our money ahead of everything else and we just want to be paid. That can't be. That's not reality, and that can't be how that would come across. But that's a very good point, though. And I think that realistically, that's probably something that sellers need to think about and sellers need to be aware of.
And one other thing before we close, unless there are others, and that's this whole, we started talking about it at our table. Chris had a great anecdote about having a Actually, I'm going to let you tell that because an appraiser came to his office the other day, and I really love what you did. Please tell that story because this whole notion of we don't finance commissions, well, yeah, you already do. So what's the difference? So I love this story.
Well, yeah, we had, the appraiser came in yesterday and, we had, I said I was going to ask the pertinent question, and that is, do you include commissions in the valuation of your properties? And he said, no, we do not. And he said they include closing costs. That was what he said. They include closing costs. And Chuck and I talked over there. Then my comment to him was, then you're telling me that every house you appraised was worth X percent higher than what you valued it at. Right? Because the money was there. Right. Seller, the money was there for the seller. So I think
it's true.
No, it is, and I mean we have to, and I think that's what we're talking about here is we're learning too, right? And there's all these conversations that it is opening us up to, and we need to have them. And we're learning new things, and we're able to speak to new truths or actually old truths too. We're able to say some things that we maybe weren't saying before. And I think at the end of all this, we're gonna be better for it. I really do believe that. Right now, it looks it's a mess. And again, I'm probably throwing NAR way under the bus here, but we have to do it on our own because we don't feel the support of our national association right now. And so, and I'm proud to say that I think everybody here is on board with doing that. So, I think we have door prizes, and then we're going to wrap up.
Where are the prizes?
You don't need a ticket for that. I heard that.
I need an uninterested party.
Dinner with Chris. Yeah, that's right. 4 door prizes.
First winner.
Michelle Fields Hole. Come on.
You have to be present to win.
Deb Hudson.
Hey.
Bob Kimball? No! It's a purse. He's a purse. Susan Parks.
Hey. Is that it, Chuck? Is that it?
Yeah.
Okay. So to close out, first, one last thing. Thank you all so much for being here today. I know it's been a long day. I truly, besides all the other stuff, I hope you get the value of what Maryland Realtors is providing you from all the presentations and all the things that are going on at Maryland Realtors on your behalf. And I have no question what my dues go to in Maryland, okay? I have no question about that. And I will continue to support Maryland Realtors that way. I hope you will too. Thank you all very much and have a great day.